Everyone's schedule flexibility. Matt, I know you don't want me to say this publicly, but I'm going to anyway. A big thank you to you and your family for your flexibility, what you're doing this evening, and I wish you safe travels once we conclude tonight's session. With that, as everyone remembers, we had progressed through our agenda that I do not currently have in front of me because I left that notebook in there, but that's okay. We had progressed through, thank you though. We had progressed through the agenda, and we were under items requiring individual action. We were discussing our budget, and we were going through specific pieces that we wanted to see added to specific pieces that we wanted to see removed, and having some discussion and some debate on what those items would be. So after we recessed, myself, manager, finance director, of course, immediately went to work trying to find a way to put something together to where we could come in here, have efficient, clearly articulated discussion on the pieces that were mostly being discussed, and if there were any others that also needed to be brought to council's attention so that no one was caught off guard by that either, bringing those together. And so that is where this presentation that our manager is going to go through shortly. After that, just so that everyone knows the sort of run of show for the remainder of the evening, we have already had council comments. However, at the end of the session, I will reopen for council comments again, as this is continuation of our first meeting of the month. Once we get to that point, we'll remain with Councilwoman Jones, District 1. You'll have the honors once we get to that point for council comments, if there are any additional comments tonight. So with that, just making everyone clear of what our agenda is going to be for the evening, I will stop talking. Matt, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for being here and accommodating this. It's a busy time of the year with budget and a lot of important decisions that we have to make. It's your largest policy document that you do annually. With that said, what I asked our finance director to do is just kind of recap. We have a few slides here to go over, and then specifically we have a slide, number 7, that we're going to kind of talk about the different types of things that we've discussed and what is kind of the major difference makers in the budget, and what I would like to ask the council to decide so that we can put forth a budget ordinance is yes or no on these particular things. And if there's some things that we don't have an agreement on specifically, we could put them in a contingency fund for the city council, and then if we determine that we want to fund those activities, we could use that money, or we can just send it back to fund balance. That wouldn't be a ton of money, but it might be $30,000, $40,000 or something like that as an example. But I will hand it over to our finance director, and she'll kick us off.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me here tonight to go over our presentation. I just wanted to say on our timeline, I updated it to include tonight's second work session of the budget, so just to let you know that, so it's updated for the amount of work that we're doing to try to get this budget passed. I include this slide only just as a reminder to our public that may be watching that we are talking about an $86.5 million annual operating funds budget, of which approximately $56 million is related to the general fund, and approximately 20 or 30% is related to the utility fund. This is the same table slide I showed you on Monday night that recaps all the annual operating funds, showing the $86.5 million recommended budget in that second column. Okay. So on this slide, what I've included for you are the previously proposed expenditure cuts in the general fund. I put it in a different table form to make it a little bit easier to read and for our audience looking online to be able to see. This includes all the same things that we talked about the other night, with a total potential impact of $248,000 that we would be able to cut out of the general fund. And of that, that makes a little over a penny difference in the property tax rate. And as you are aware, the proposed budget came in with a 15-cent proposed property tax increase, so this would impact that budget by a little over a penny. The next slide are the additional revenue fund sources. that were from that same slide that we had Monday night. The only thing that you will note there is the third item where I marked it new HUD funding for administration costs in the Community Relations and Development Department. When I was looking over the budget, I noticed that we had not included that amount that gets funded by HUD for administration. This would be for the 10 months of the community relations specialist that is being proposed. So actually that helps offset. So I've reduced, per the council's request on the previous slide, let me back up because I did change that. The second and third line, the savings 2 months for the CD position and the same for the minimum housing. I reduced those from 3 months to 2 months only because I think that reflects a realistic time frame for being able to advertise and hire for the position. And then on top of that, there was a missing revenue source for the amount that HUD would pay for that community relations specialist at 100%. So that's actually another revenue source coming in. So that total impact of revenue, additional revenue, is $489,000, which comes in a little over 2 pennies that can come off of that proposed tax rate. So the summary in blue at the bottom shows if we start with the 15-cent property tax rate and we reduce it for the proposed expenditure cuts and add back for the additional revenue sources, we're at a proposed property tax rate of about 11.8 cents. It's got to be even. I mean, so we'll have to figure out how to make that like either 11 and a half. So 11.8 is going to be really difficult to pass along to the tax department. So we need to try and make it in increments of a half. So just FYI on that, we'll have to make that work itself out. And then I will turn it over to Matt so he can talk about the topics for discussion.
Thank you, Catherine. So this is where, I want to entertain discussion with the city council. I want to go back to our retreat we had in February, and just so that to make sure that you recognize that we have put in the elements of the budget that you wanted to see, such as we went ahead and increased the police pay. That's done. The fire pay is in there. These are the big items. You asked for a COLA during the retreat. I put that in there at 2.5%, recognizing that that's still 1% below the cost consumer price index. But what I want to do is, and I just wanted to point that out because that's what's really driving this budget, is public safety and trying to get the 31 vacancies down to a more manageable number so that we're not dealing with not being able to put the full effects of what we need to put in play to handle the crime situation and tackle that. So there's some things in here that we adjusted because we looked at, like, for example, I'll make note of this, comprehensive planning. The project costs $175,000. We did budget, we did go out for estimates for that, but we don't really think we'll be able to complete that in 1 year. So we would start out the first year with $100,000, and we'd have to complete it the following year with the remaining $75,000. But that also enabled us to split that up and do the pavement conditions index rating plan, as you also requested recently. And we estimate that cost, based on some recent estimates, to be about $75,000. So what I really want to do is, if we go down this list here, then we can say yes or no to these increases or decreases or whatever you want to call them. They have a effect on the budget, and you can see what that correlates to in terms of, your tax rate, and see if we still want to do those things that we talked about back in February. So I'll just start it out. The implementation of fire raises. We are the lowest paid fire department. I think we've got the chief here, and I think he's nodding his head back there. And that's also been verified by our HR director in the county. He's done an excellent job in maintaining his guys there and keeping morale high, but at some point in time, if we can't keep pace with other people around us, he's going to start having the same problems that our police department has been having until recently. So that's what that cost is. Do we want to continue with that as you've asked me to?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and I do want everybody to shake their heads and say yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I want to be very. Okay, so, maybe we can go through some of the ones and we can, that are easier. Do you want to go to COLA? Do you want to discuss that now, or do you want to go to a different one? Because I'm taking them by most of them as the largest to the smallest. Are we ready to discuss COLA?
Let's stay with COLA. Let's keep going in order.
Okay, so
and
the
if we
COLA,
have to skip, we'll skip.
my justification for the COLA is that, it's not just about inflation. That you as a city council, and I totally agree with the raising of the police and fire. We need to do that to stay competitive, and that is a very important thing. But, we also have a lot of other employees that we've got to be concerned with, and that work very hard for us every day. And we need to try to do what we can for them. Now, I know it's a difficult budget year, so I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll leave it up to you guys to make that decision.
I'm for keeping it.
Yes.
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 Yes, even though competitive-wise, the county only issued 2%. You guys are 100% for the 2.5.
I am.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. Since we moved past just a simple yes or no, interim manager Livingston, you said that 2.5 COLA was half of what the consumer price index or
The
inflation is?
CPI is 3.5%.
It's 3.5, so it's not half.
Okay, so even with 2.5, we haven't even, in theory, broke our employees even in that regard.
Yeah.
At 2.5.
My thinking on that was that inflation is cooling. I certainly hope so. And that, throughout the course of the next year, it may be more down below, at least below 3%.
Okay. Well, I'm an absolute yes on the 2.5.
So it sounds like we've got consensus there. I think with the community development specialist, the rationale behind that was that, the funds that we deal with community development and the nature of that work requires a lot of administration of the paperwork and dealing with the rules and regulations. It's very time consuming. Right now, we have one person that's doing that work, and that's really not enough for a size city of ours as an entitlement city to make sure that we're spending our funds and making sure we're getting projects done. And we're making a lot of progress there, but we could make more if we had, and we could use HUD funding to do it, to get somebody in here. That's going to be a difficult hire, but I'm recommending it because Felicia needs help, and probably one of the departments that needs more help than a lot of other ones, I can say. She's basically, she has help in the community relations side of it, but on the community development, she's pretty much the one-person show there. So that's a HUD-funded one, so are you guys okay with that position?
Absolutely.
I am. I certainly am. I'll also add this. This is something that Ms. Williams has asked for multiple times.
It has.
So this is not taking anything away from her. Quite the opposite. This is adding something to her that she has asked for multiple times.
So it don't come out of the budget if it's
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, it doesn't come out of the budget.
And it's dearly needed. She's got her hands full over there, and I commend her for what she's doing with what she's had, that's for sure.
All right, thank you. The next one is a minimum housing specialist. I think about 8 months ago, roughly, the planning department created a minimum housing code, which we really need to start affecting. It allows us to move quickly, or move more quickly, I should say, on condemning and tearing down houses. We have a backlog right now because last year we didn't put any demolition funds in the budget. And so we need to have a minimum housing specialist to help us with that backlog and also help us get the housing and commercial dilapidated structures. We need to take a lot of action on that. We've got a lot of blight in the city and throughout the city, and we need one person that's dedicated to just slum and blight. And they would work closely with community development. That would be one of the things that we would stress there.
Is that cost taking in consideration the 2-month deference or no?
Yes, ma'am, it's gonna take at least 2 months we feel, to
But
hire
that
some.
price is reflecting that.
That's the 10 months.
10
This
months.
is the
Okay.
10 months.
10 months.
Mhm, that's what I was asking.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I just want to let everyone know that I know this is a planning position, but to me, the reason this is so important as well is because these empty, abandoned properties that are in a lot of our districts, especially District 1, 3, and 4, it directly impacts crime. So we're talking about reducing crime, and you have empty houses that are getting burnt down. That's a hazard if, you know, someone was to go in there and get hurt, but it's also, you have people, you know, going into these homes and using them to do things that are contributing to the crime problems in our neighborhoods. So I want to look at it at that, in that aspect as well, to show the importance of that position, please.
Councilman Boyd, you asked to be recognized next.
I just wanted to echo those comments. I completely agree, and particularly in the districts 1, 3, and 4, where there seems to be a concentration of things that's needed for. But in addition to that, what this is doing is helping every district and helping this whole city by adding this position so that we can make code enforcement more efficient and get more going with code enforcement. If there's a dedicated person for this particular task, then that benefits code enforcement citywide. And as I've spoke to a couple of times before, we have needs in the city for code enforcement, and we need to get things moving in that regard again. So this not only will help those districts with the most need for this minimum housing officer, but by having that minimum housing officer, it helps this entire city with code enforcement. So I completely support that addition of that position. That's my comment on that line item, Mr. Mayor.
Understood. Anyone else have any other comments on line 4, for or against? All right. 4, line 4.
I'm saying I'm for.
Oh, 4. I think you have your consensus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following suit on that is demolition. Like I said, this year, we did not put in, normally we fund 100,000 for demolition so that we can have the funds needed to tear down homes and structures that are, just, that have been sitting there and they're slum, they're blight, they're problems for the community. I'd like us to be able to take some of those down. We've had to use, a good example of what I thought was a really good thing that the city council did is we took down the structure on John Street. And that was about an $80,000 demolition thing. But it made that area look so much better. And, it enables us to, that's our property. So we can do future things there. We need to have that same kind of mentality towards, other areas to see what we can do to clean them up. We need a little bit of money to help us get there.
So my question is, did we fund this last year, and how much did we use up?
So this current year, we did not fund it. That's why there hasn't been any activity. We took money from the, I think from the fund balance. I'm trying to remember what that's 80,000 to do that particular project over there on John Street.
And then my next question, if that one project was 80,000, we only budgeted 100,000, so it varies on whatever the project is.
Absolutely. So on an average, it's a very good question. Depending on whether or not there's asbestos abatement or whatever, but a house may cost, like a regular single-family house may cost about $10,000. So, we can get half a dozen or more, depending on the types of houses again.
So will we have a concerted plan to maximize that 100,000?
We do.
We'll go with single-family homes to maximize the 100,000 instead of, and that's just like an emergency. I understand emergency things.
Yeah.
But like the one on John Street was a safety hazard.
Yep.
But for this, for planning purposes, will we be maximizing this, saying that we tearing down stuff that's in 3,
Yes.
4? Okay.
We've actually met with Councilwoman Taylor on that, and and I asked the planning department to give me some, so where they are in the process with a lot of things. So there'll be some properties coming before the city council that we're going to be requesting demolition on. So we're going to need some funds there. The only reason why this is up here is because I've taken everything basically that's above $100,000 and put it out there so you could look at it and we could talk about it and decide whether it felt like we had to have it or not.
No, I just want to make sure we get the biggest bang for our buck and not just do one, you know, like the 80,000.
And that's a very smart approach to it. I would think we would identify several houses and hire one person, a contractor, to get a little bit of economies of scale there.
All right.
Councilwoman Taylor, and then was there anyone else who wanted to queue up behind? All right, Ms. Taylor?
Right, so when we met with planning, there are a number of homes, especially 3 or 4 burnt down homes that people are still going in and the homes could fall down on them. But also there are some homes that people are congregating in and selling drugs out of and all these things. And I think we would maybe be able to get 10 or, you know, right at 10 homes torn down for that amount.
I'll add, Councilman, and then I'll make my comments.
I would like for this council, our new council that we have now, to consider each year making sure that we continue to fund this, because not funding it and not doing some of this is how we got in the position that we're in now. And it's unfortunate that we have to fund it on the front end, of course, but when we do some of this, we'll eventually see the return of the money once the property's sold and we get our money back from grass cutting, demolition, whatever we had to do. So we do have to put the money in it up front, but we are going to see it back eventually. But I want us to seriously consider funding this as much as we can in the years to come beyond this one, because there's much to be done.
Council, any other comments on line number 5, demolition, for or against? I'll just simply say this for those watching. I hate having to tear down property. I just conceptually, I am a repair and rebuild, focused guy. You know, the idea of demolishing someone else's property was, I just hate it. But once it reaches a point where that it is absolutely negatively impacting the rest of the block, the neighbors, everything, we as a city have to be willing to hold ourselves to a standard that warrants coming and living in the city. And so, yes, this is one of those line items, just like the minimum housing, just like the increases that we're doing for police and the added work that we're doing with the nuisance letters with Chief. It's all part of this process that we outlined as a council that we wanted to focus on during that strategy session when we first came on, of being able to focus on crime and general public safety within the city. So I appreciate everyone's time on this one. So in general, I have not heard any comments against number 5. I either need to take that as a general consensus, because we can't actually have, we're not actually calling votes on each of these, but we're trying to get a general consensus. Do we have a general consensus on number 5 in favor of?
Yes, for me.
But that's already in the actual budget. I'm for it, but I just want to make sure it's in
is.
there. That's all.
Yeah.
But
All
these were things
are on
that were either controversial and were discussed, or were $100,000 marks if we were trying to make changes. That's it, and that's all.
Gotcha.
Because those are things that'll move the needle, so to speak.
Right, and and as you've seen, they've already made a number of smaller line item adjustments that added up to being able to get down to where we are. So, all right, Mr. Livingston, if you would carry us on to number 6.
So number 6 is the employee bonus that was recommended. I did not include it in the manager's recommended budget. Not that it's not worthy of that, it's just, it's a very fiscally tight budget, so, but I leave it at that. Let y'all talk about that.
I know that
Yes, Ms. Jones, please.
Councilwoman Taylor brought that up at the last, and I wanted to know was something was carried up, because I did not vote for the budget last time because it had the utility raise in it. So is this 400 supposed to be carried over this year? Or are we gonna vote on whether we should have it?
No, it's not carried over. It is a separate item. You either say, it was brought to my attention that, can we add something in there? And I said, well, that's up to you, the city council, to decide whether or not you wish to give all employees a straight up $400, like a Christmas bonus, after taxes.
Well, is there any way that we could cut that down?
Yes.
Or, yeah, because I am for the 2.5, I am. And bonuses are great, and our staff are really great, but we're trying to cut some things. So, what would the council?
I want to agree
Just
with,
if you would, because we had Councilman Boyette who had comments, and if you'll queue up right behind Councilman after Ms. Jones finishes her comments. Councilwoman, the floor is still,
I was
Councilwoman, the
just
floor is
asking
still
if
yours.
we could cut it down, and I wanted what the council would say. What are y'all?
I mean, you can do whatever you want with it. I'm not trying to, you can get rid of it altogether, or you can say you're going to do 1% or something, or you can even go up.
I think a
more.
Christmas bonus is great. I have no problem with that, but we proposed a 2.5 COLA, and that's gonna be every month. And bonus, Christmas is good, but we are looking somewhere to cut some things down so that we don't have to raise taxes so high. So I wanted to, employ my councilman's opinion.
If you would, Mr. Boyette, is your
I just
comment
had a
in
question.
But well, then, if you'll hold that, let's address Councilwoman Jones's comments. Were there any comments in response to Councilwoman Jones?
Go ahead.
Councilman Wright, and then Pro Tem, or vice versa, as y'all see fit.
She can go.
All right, Pro Tem.
I just wanted to know, this bonus is just for full-time employee? It's for everyone?
Well, in the past, it has included permanent part-time and full-time people. Now, if the council wishes to include people that are part-time or temporary, that's of course your choice. It adds a nominal amount to the total. We typically have prorated it.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions specifically in relation to Councilwoman Jones's idea of adjusting the amount?
My question might
Then,
be,
and if you will, then what we'll do is we'll come back to that comment, Councilwoman Jones. We'll see if that idea resurfaces. Councilman Boyette, the floor is yours, followed by Councilwoman Weeks, and then Councilman White. Okay.
this question might affect the conversation, is
Okay.
why I wanted to ask it at this particular point. So some feedback that come back from the field was that there were employees that were under the impression, per the previous council, and I wasn't a part of that, so that's why this is a question, per the previous council's decision in the last budget cycle, that bonus was an ongoing, it was to be provided for each year. So my question would be to previous council and staff, is that the case, or was that a one-time, once occurring bonus under that particular budget? Because that would make a difference if it was intended, or the thought process was for it to be each year, then I don't want to interrupt that process, but if that's not the case, then I'll defer to whatever the council as a majority thinks is best.
Well,
So
I'm getting
is it-
confused because I just said that, and didn't you say that it wasn't?
So the reality is that every time you set a budget, this council has the authority to basically, in a former council cannot legally bind a future council. So with a new council being sworn in, new mayor, you basically have to, that this is an expenditure that, you can do something with. Now, was it intended to be permanent? I don't really recall, but I know that as part of this discussion that, you have the authority, it couldn't be binding. You couldn't say you're going to have a penny in your tax rate that's going to be going towards bonuses. And then a new council says, I can't change that because that would be illegal. No, Ron's not here, but I'm pretty sure on that one.
Well, I understand the legal concept, but meaning that what was it implied that was going to be something that was going to carry on? Was there
I think someone may have wanted that in effect, and I understand that, but I don't think that's, I don't know that that was the consensus of the whole board at the time. We have a
Okay.
few of them that were here, but I don't know that that was what the intention was.
Ms. Weeks and then Councilman White.
Before I make the comment, I have a question.
I'm
Ms.
sorry,
Nguyen.
Councilwoman Weeks and then Councilman White. Apologies.
Was COLA given last year? I wasn't serving then, so I don't know. Was COLA given
It
last
was.
year?
It was
So
a
it
2% COLA last year.
It was 2% COLA last year, okay? So it was 2%
And a
last year.
1% merit.
Right. Guys, we're looking at a 12 to 15 cent tax increase. I work with multi-million-dollar budgets since I've been in my 20s. This is an extremely, if we're asking for a 12 to a 15 cent tax increase, that lets you know it is a critical crisis year when you're asking for a tax increase that high. We're giving the COLA, is what the majority of you have asked for, is the 2.5 instead of the 2%. Looking at our benefits package in comparison with other organizations and entities of our size and other businesses of our size, our benefits package is competitive. We offer retirement, we offer 401k. I am saying we all want to give a bonus. We would all love to get, I sat down 63 employees myself and have told them this week, hey, you're going to get this, but unfortunately, we cannot give this bonus this year. We have got to find ways to cut. And so if we're giving COLA, my recommendation would be that we save this penny tax. That would automatically shave a whole penny of tax off of there. Our package, our benefits package is still competitive for our area.
I was just under the impression that it was.
If you would, let Councilwoman Weeks finish her comments, and then Councilman Taylor is Councilman White is queued up right behind her, and then we can continue with commentary.
I was just going to say
Yes,
the
ma'am.
2% they were given last year compared to the 2.5% this year. I believe until we can get out of the crisis crunch that we are in, could we look at postponing this for a year, since we're hiring all these new positions?
To clarify, postpone the
$400 bonuses this year. It would save a penny.
Councilman White, floor is yours.
I'm kind of torn on this one right here because I am trying to find ways to cut. However, could we, if all possible, just to see, put this one like on the side burner until we work through the rest of them to see if we cut enough that we could go back and revisit this.
I think that might make sense.
I'm comfortable with that. Obviously, this one certainly does have discussion, and there's a number of different layers to this. If you're comfortable with, if council is amenable to that, we will address 6 after we've done the rest of them. We'll move to number 7 unless council has any further comments at this time on number 6, which obviously I will not cut them off if you do.
I'm good with
Okay. Mr. Livingston, if you
Thank
would
you, Mayor.
carry us through number 7.
Just to clarify too, on number 6, that is not in the budget, so that's adding back a penny into the, so just so we understand. The MPO funding, which of course is in the budget, we give $100,000 to United Way. They do tremendous things in the community. Again, that's picked up because it's a $100,000 item. I think they're doing a lot of good work for a lot of different nonprofits. They'll be back here in July to talk to us about what it is that they've been doing for the benefit of the city.
And if I may, let's clarify on that. United Way handles the $100,000 that we allocate for NPOs. We don't
That's correct.
hand United Way $100,000 for themselves, their own operations. They last year, which is why this is back up here, it's a $100,000 item that everyone up here needs to be in consensus with or not. But we need to do it in full transparency. United Way last year served as a very good partner to be able to vet, assess, and then we wrote the individual checks, correct, Catherine?
Correct.
So Ms. Gwynn confirmed we write the checks directly from us, but they were the vetting partner in doing that.
I have a question about that
All right,
one.
Ms. Weeks, and then All right, and then Pro Tem.
I 100% am a United Way fan. I'm for United Way, but I have a question for you concerning the United Way 100,000 that goes to the NPOs. Do city employees contribute to the United Way campaign? Roughly, can you tell me roughly about what that contribution is to United Way?
I can look real quick, and if you give me
Okay.
a pause a second, I can tell you.
Because we could take our employee investment that we are contributing to United Way and designate it for those particular NPOs. I'm wondering if the money equals out, if it's about the same amount of money.
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be close.
Probably 15,000.
I know on our employee contributions, we can select the NPO we want them to go to. That's why I'm asking that question.
Okay, so is there, any other questions on that or comments?
Let's just pause for just a second and let Ms. Quinn get the answer to that question. And,
That's why I was trying to, on this, I'm not trying to go off this item.
Okay, all right,
I'm just
perfect.
trying to continue conversation on it.
Pro Tem, the floor is yours, and then anyone else right after Pro Tem, the floor is
I
yours.
just had a consideration. This board talked a lot about public safety and how, trying to figure out crime prevention, different things. I would like for us to consider with our nonprofit funding, if we could focus on those organizations that aid in that area. We're not financially secure enough to pull out our own funding to put towards those type of initiatives. But if we can focus on those nonprofits that do that, I think it would be helpful to include the restorative justice with communities and schools, and to still include the Wish and the Watch, but primarily focus on organizations that help with crime prevention. I think I would like for us to consider that moving forward with the nonprofit funding.
I'll offer my own commentary and then hand the floor off.
And re-entry.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I have a quick
good.
question. In your position, would you still use United Way as the intermediary? Or would you
I'm
go
okay
directly?
I'm okay with that, and I think
I prefer to do it
because the
that way.
staff has
Certainly asked for that.
I would highly recommend using United Way still to
thank you.
funnel out those funds, because they can make sure it is a viable
Yes.
nonprofit. They're registered with the Secretary of State for their solicitation license and the proper 501c3 paperwork. All.
So to answer your question, Councilwoman Weeks, according to our records, it was right around $6,800 or so that was employee.
$6,800 is employee based. Okay.
All right. Councilman, did I see your hand go up, Councilman? All right. Councilman?
I just wanted to ask a question to Pro Tem's point. So I think I'm pretty sure I understand how the process with the United Way works. The nonprofit comes forward, makes application or request to United Way, and then United Way basically handles that. So is the entity that you refer to, have they made application to, I'm just asking, have they made application previously, or is this would this be a new entry into that funding?
Well, I think that there are some agencies that do work in that arena. It may not be very much specific crime prevention, but just for instance, communities and schools have that restorative justice piece. So there are some, I think so. And if the council was to say that we're focusing on this area, there may be some organizations that will come forward to do that.
Gotcha. Okay, good.
You can require that those be designated
Yes,
to
you can.
particular funds.
That's what we do.
So in general, obviously, we still have to get into, later on, there would actually have to be a conversation with United Way about the specific requirements. Right now, we're just talking about allocating the line item within the budget so that the funding is there, so that when we have the conversation later, we already know basically the amount. In general, is there consensus around approving item number 7 and keeping it in the budget?
Yes.
All right. Pro Tem?
This, the 100,000 includes the consultant fee, right? So
That's
it's really
correct.
90,000.
It's really 90,000,
That we
yeah.
allot. It's the,
Right,
and
that is
then
true.
Right.
Yes,
I
yes,
just want to
ma'am.
make sure.
The
we
coach,
still-
the
that's what we're still doing.
consultant fee goes to United Way?
That's
we go?
correct. It's an administration fee.
They do an administrative fee.
They can't volunteer?
Isn't, is that,
Councilman Boyette.
is that because,
You know what I'm saying?
Look, I wish.
Hold on,
Same
Councilman
question.
Boyette has the floor, and then, and obviously Councilwoman Johnson. Councilman Boyette.
to Councilman White's point, is that because the administrative fee applies to each individual request and there's like 20 people, 20 things that money's going to,
No.
or is that a flat, just a flat fee?
It's going to be a
The-
flat fee.
And we can look
That's a little
up.
stiff, man.
Well, and that was last year's. Again, it was 10%, right?
That's correct.
There's 10% admin fee that they did with us as well as some other folks. But again, they're the ones that pull together the committee to do the assessment. They're the ones that do the training of that committee, and then, I mean, it's a fair amount of work.
So it's a value.
In my opinion, it's a value add. If you look at the amount of money that we spent in admin time the year prior, specifically in that guy's time, it was way more than $10,000. But when we get to that specific agreement and that contract, it's going to be up to council to be able to say, we agree to these terms or not. And if we can't come to terms, then we still have the money in our budget to be able to allocate however we see fit. Sorry, don't have a heart attack.
So could we reduce the 100,000 by what the amount the employees are contributing? I mean, could we make that cut to save money or no?
I don't think you can really do that, and here's
Okay.
the reason why. Because I'm just strictly using Miss Matthews for an example.
Okay.
She is giving to United Way, but she should be able to, on her slip, select the NPO that she wants to personally
So she
support.
could choose, she could change her decision at,
Yes, that's correct.
okay.
So in general, where we are on, I'm sorry, does anyone else have any other comments right now?
No, that, the only thing that I
Please.
was saying is that I asked the same question last year, so that's why I was laughing so hard.
So do we have on item number 7, a general consensus to keep item number 7 in the budget?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll move to, again, I'm not trying to be rude or to cut off. Obviously, council can control conversation. I just want to keep us moving. It's,
Can
To
I ask you
some
one
extent.
more question on that
Yes,
one?
ma'am, Councilman.
Are the NPOs that were listed in our book, are those solidified, or could they lean more to what Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tem Matthews was suggesting with re-entry, all of those?
for those last
So
year.
every year, that's why I said she can come here in July, and you can reestablish who it is that you want to, whatever your target priorities are. And that's why I thought we would have that discussion with her, and I asked her to come back in July for that reason. She's ready to do that.
Okay. Thank you for letting me
So to
ask.
answer that specific question, no, ma'am, they're not set in stone.
Okay.
That's correct.
So just hypothetical.
Yes, sir.
I gotta ask the question. I tried not to, but I got to.
Mhm.
So what happens if we don't fund
If we
the
don't,
NPOs?
it's 100% a thing that we do because we see a need. Now, here's to that point. You do have other municipalities that say we're going to cap at some amount, $1 per citizen is actually Raleigh's rule. $1 per tax-paying
Right.
citizen. Well, in Raleigh, that's a little over $330,000. In Goldsboro, that's about $33,000. So we are at a higher funding rate per capita than even Raleigh. Now, looking at it, are we hitting NPOs that are making a difference in the community? And is it something that we want to continue doing, that we feel we're leveraging those dollars, those taxpayer dollars, in a way that is making a larger impact? That's ultimately for this council to decide, and is a worthy question. Because again, looking at what, just using Raleigh as an example, because that's the only one that's come into mind. It's been a year since I really thought about this, but if I'm not mistaken, last year's it was $1 per tax-paying citizen. So it's a valid question. You're absolutely valid to ask that question.
I guess if somebody who, I can't recall who the money was given to last year, does anybody know what the return on investment, when I say that, I'm just saying, do we know what organization got the funds last year?
We do, sir, and we actually did ask, and they were happy to do so. Each organization that received funding as part of our NPO funding program actually came to council. It may have been right around the transition or just before the transition to report on their outcomes for that year. And that was a pretty important piece of ensuring that there's some accountability that we wrote into it. I don't remember if, yes, ma'am.
There's actually a brochure in each one of council's
Yes.
mailboxes from the United Way on the outcomes from the year.
There you
Each
go.
one of those nonprofits.
There you go. As well as them actually coming in front of council. Again, that may have been just before the transition, but I remember it happening.
I have one more question.
Yes,
I'm
Councilwoman.
wondering if there's, and can I just be honest with you? I'm the biggest Sherry Archibald fan in the community. I love her, I admire her, and I appreciate everything that she does for our community. Our employees, you just told me, are roughly raising about close to $7,000 for United Way. But we're paying United Way $10,000 to spend our $100,000. Well, now it's not even $100,000 for the NPOs. It's $90,000 for the NPO. Is there any possibility that we could come together with the United Way and maybe try to come up with a MOU, a partnership? Look, our employees are donating almost $7,000. Can you cut your admin fee, even if it's by half? Because we want to partner with you. I mean, our employees are raising money for United Way. Is there not, can we not come to the table and sign some kind of MOU to, or partnership to say, hey, let's partner. We want you to continue with doing this for us year after year, handling the credentials for these MPOs for us, but this is costing us $10,000 when in fact that money, dollar for dollar, could be going straight to the NPO
We
and
haven't-
impacting even more individuals in our community.
And to that point, do we have an agreement of their operations for next year yet?
So no, that's why,
Right.
you know, I really wanted to come back and so we could talk about those things in July
Right.
and kind of talk about this was the first year that they've done, and I think they're doing a very excellent job.
Excellent job.
And I think they're definitely an organization that is well regarded, you know, nationally, truth be told. But yeah, if we want to talk to them about those things, they come back in July and we talk about what our priorities are and what kind of areas we want the funds to be focused towards. And if there's any negotiation, MOU or whatever you have it towards that administration fee. I think tonight it's more about, okay, do we want to continue funding at this level and pretty much move forward with it.
All right, Councilman?
Meaning budget now performance of how the money is going to be used that we set aside in July or whatever. So I get that, but so if it was said a few minutes ago that our admin costs are significantly more than the 10,000. What happens if they say, no, we're not going to do that, and then it costs us 20 to do it ourselves? I mean,
I just want to be very, very clear. What we're discussing right now, you know, to each of y'all's point, because both of y'all are echoing the same sentiment and concern. This is not committing us to United Way specifically. This is just simply allocating
Earmark.
100,000 as an earmark within the budget to
Okay.
be able to do NPO funding. It is my expectation, and I think it would be a good expectation to reach an agreement with United Way, whether it's at the 10% mark or not. I'm not getting into that at this particular moment. So this is, for lack of a better term, you know, the line item in the budget that would be set aside for NPOs. That's really the debate, is what the number should be, or if it should exist.
And how many MPOs was that? I'm sorry, I forgot. What page is that?
Yeah, it's 10 or 12.
We funded 11 of the
11, okay.
90,000.
So council, on the specific question of of item number 7, do we have a consensus on item number 7? Do we want to increase that number? Do we want to decrease that number? Do we want to remove that number? But in general, let's reach a consensus on what we want to do with NPO fund.
I'm okay with leaving it as is.
I'd love to see y'all cut it.
Me personally, I think we should either cut it or alleviate it.
Okay.
I'd love to see you cut it by at least 50% this year, just because we're in a crunch. I've seen years past that the city council really could not, had to forego giving as much to NPO. So it's very generous that we did this, and so I honor all of you for coming up with this number. But again, we're in an extreme crisis year. I would love to see either we forego it and we empower and encourage our employees to continue giving with United Way, or we cut it by 50%.
All right, so we have a proposal that we reduce it to 50%, which would be $50,000. On that specific question, is there consensus around doing that or not doing that? And then after that, I'll get back to you. All right, Pro Tem.
Councilwoman Weeks, would that include, thank you, Madam Clerk, would that include still the 10%, because it'll make a difference, so it'll be 40,000 instead of the 50, or are you saying?
Okay, I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, okay? From what I'm understanding, if I understood the mayor correctly, we're just voting on the actual amount. We're not committing to United Way. So if we were to go with United Way, yes, Mayor Pro Tem, you're correct, that would still cut that 10,000, but there should still be possibilities between now and July that we could try to renegotiate that with the United Way team. And so I was looking at an amount and not any kind of contractual basis or anything right now at this point.
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to be safe in case we decided to stay with United Way. I didn't want to.
That's right.
I didn't want to cut it down again for the nonprofits. So if 50 is what we want to allocate to the nonprofits, I think we still have to consider any consultant fee. So do we do 60 or do we do 50, knowing that that consultant fee is included in that, or do we give us a little bit of grace? So that's what.
Yes, ma'am.
Personally, I can be fine with either of those numbers. I think that's a staunch fiscally conservative approach. I believe that we need to do something. I can be comfortable. I do want to keep something in the budget, regardless of what administrative fee. I can be comfortable with either of those. We just kind of need to reach in a general consensus.
I would be comfortable with the 60 and asked United Way if they would consider a partnership with us at MOU to help us with this.
All right, Councilwoman Taylor, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to understand something correctly, please. So when we were doing 100,000, were you saying that 10% was for that fee?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
if we're doing 50,000, then that means only 5,000 would go to that fee.
Not necessarily.
Well, and also we're speaking in total hypotheticals.
Hypothetically,
Because
if it
we
was
don't
United Way.
currently actually have an agreement for next year.
Okay.
And for all we know,
So
that
just hypothetically.
yeah, they may still come back and say it's a flat fee. Yeah, I don't know. And full transparency, I don't know.
Right, but I was just saying, prior
Right.
agreements were, it was 10% of the amount that we earmarked for.
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then I would think that if we're gonna cut it 50, if we're just gonna do 50, we just do 50. And then, because it was just like 100, the fee was coming out of that, so if we were doing 50, the fee would have to come out of that. If we're cutting it, we're cutting it. Right?
Well, I was thinking that we would just do the 60 to have the grace.
Did I see any other hands?
So we said 60?
At the moment, we're discussing 60.
Yeah,
All right, Councilman Boyette, I saw your hand up.
So when this line item is put in the budget, and that puts the funds there so we can, at our discretion, use those funds for this purpose. So are they going to have to come forward after July 1 and make some sort of presentation that we actually fund with a monetary amount that's up to this line item amount? Because if so, This is just a reservation of the line item amount, not what we've spent, and it's not gonna change the tax rate. Whether you put 100 on here or you put 50 on here, it's not gonna it's not gonna move the needle with the budget one way or another. I'm okay with if the council decides as a whole that that's all we want to spend, but what we put on there as a line item is not gonna change the tax rate either way, because it's not moving the needle, because we're not gonna spend the money yet. So when it gets time to spend the money, if we decide as a council, we're only gonna spend 40 or whatever, or 60, that's up to us either way, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, so right now, if you say you want to take that out, you're not going to do any kind of, let's forget about who the agency is, you're not going to do any NPO funding. You'd have to take it out of the budget altogether, so that money would not be there.
But if you only took out half of it, it's not gonna move the.
No,
I mean, I'm
it's
fine
like
with
a
taking
quarter
half
cent,
of
we
it.
still have to round off, so.
Yeah, it would affect, yes, Councilwoman Taylor, you have the floor.
Okay, so question, once again, back to this cutting it 50%. If we're hypothetically not saying that we're using the United Way for that, this is just going to NPOs, then how can we say how much they need? We just, if we're gonna cut it 50%, we just need to cut it 50% and then negotiate the amount later when we determine who's gonna do that. And then to Councilman Boyette's comment, I thought the purpose of us going down was to make cuts, and then, you know, once we make all the cuts we're making, then hopefully we get to the point where a cent will be taken off, not just worried about if one thing we're changing is gonna make a difference. Does that make sense?
Where we are right now, this spreadsheet in front of us, the NPO funding, currently $100,000 would be allocated for that line item, and the direct impact on the tax rate would be 0.4 of a penny, so just under half of a penny.
Understand.
So then knocking it down to 50 would effectively be a quarter of a penny that would change in the tax rate. It would, now, when would that come out in rounding once we get to the actual number? I can't say yet, but it would impact, you know, a quarter cent, something like that.
That'll get us down to 11.
But if we're making multiple cuts.
Right, exactly.
things,
It
then it's
could
gonna
have a
add up.
compounding effect, absolutely.
Right, that's what I'm
We'll
saying.
get
I'm
through
not
this and
looking
we'll
at
see
the
where we're
picture of
at.
just that one item. I'm saying if we're making cuts trying to save money, then eventually we're gonna get to be cutting
Right.
pennies, right?
So
Yes.
That's true.
All right, so we have a number that's been presented. I've heard 50, I've heard 60.
Sir, can I say one
Yes,
more thing?
yes, ma'am.
I'm going to say I'm okay with the 50%, and here's another reason why. If you cut your funding, because it is a crisis year, of your NPOs to 50,000 instead of 100,000, essentially, you know, we don't want to, but we're going to have to cut out some NPOs. When your funding is that low, at some point, the finance department is going to be able to handle it if it's not 11 and 12 different NPOs, but because I love your brilliant idea about organizations that work with homelessness, work with the crime rate that we're trying to get down. So I honor that statement, but with less money, it's less NPOs, and we could possibly handle it in-house instead of having to pay an admin fee, and then for dollar in the community, we make a greater impact.
I think we should just do 50. Just cut it.
I'd
Well,
rather keep
I'm
it on
okay
there.
with either one. I mean, you know, I just want it cut.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay with 50 instead of 60.
I
and
mean,
just
and
Well,
then,
like I said, I'm okay. I said the 60 to leave, have a little grace period, because I'm always looking into a grace period, but I'm okay with 50 or 60, as long as we cut.
Okay. So we have an either, we have a
I'm
50,
50.
you have a 50. Pro Tem? I hear you. We're talking about $10,000 in the $80 million budget, but, yeah,
And I'll go with what the group says. I don't have a preference.
right. Councilwoman Weeks, Councilman White, between 50 and 60, do you have a preference?
Oh, between those two numbers, no.
Right,
I'm going to say the 50.
the 50?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I believe we have a general consensus around the 50.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. All right, so the next one is the comprehensive land use plan, and so So we're over 10 years behind, or I guess since the last adoption of our land use plan. The city is experiencing growth, more so now than we have in several years, which is a good thing. And we've run into some situations sometimes where the land use plan has been kind of fuzzy on, what the future should look like. So, and sometimes you get challenges because, you're supposed to follow your land use plan, but if your land use plan isn't updated, and people can challenge you. But, so what we thought about doing with this one, since it is trying to just be as very thrifty, for lack of a better term, about this, is we could wait another year and not do it at all. But if we try to start it halfway into the year, knowing that it's probably a 2-year process, then, we estimated the cost based on conversations we've had with consultants about what it would cost. It would be about $175,000. We could do $100,000 this year. And then, what that enabled us to do also is take the $75,000, I'm jumping ahead here, we'd also do the pavement condition rating index that Mayor Pro Tem had asked about. So we feel like those are two kind of planning tools that we need. And I think if this, as a new city council, I would think that you would want to forge ahead with the new land use plan and a new vision for the future, seeing that, we're getting a lot of growth now. But that's what that is.
I'll offer my quick comment, and then I'll open up the floor. I think that our planning department needs another 6 months to be able to get its feet underneath them with new staff, with new turnover, with some of the larger projects that they've been working through. And so I think that doing it as a half year, so that we know we're going to be spreading it over 2 fiscal years, I think is a wise maneuver. And it also allows us to go ahead and commit to get going, but it gives our planning department time to get its feet underneath them with some new staff, as well as be able to go through that actual procurement process that takes time in and of itself. So I support going ahead and getting this thing started, but doing it over 2 fiscal years, I think, is a good maneuver. Council, any comments or questions on line item number 8, for or against? Person?
So with the 100,000 in over 2 years, which I agree with what you said, what does that mean? Is it like 50 this year, 50 the next year? Is that what you're saying?
No, actually, what's happened here, and this was a wise idea, I think, by our interim city manager. The last version of this had the comprehensive land use plan at $175,000. Recognizing that the likelihood of being able to complete that $175,000 planning cycle within this fiscal year was unlikely, and recognizing that a stated concern by multiple members of council, including you and me, that our pavement conditions are atrocious, and knowing that that department probably could knock out its plan within a fiscal year, it made sense to take that 175 and split it up over 2 line items. Now, ultimately, during this conversation, we may choose to remove one of them or not, but we feel like this would be a better bang for our buck.
So if we do the half of year, would that not make this 50, or the half of year is going to be, so it's roughly going to be $200,000 that we split?
We're roughly splitting 175. Which is really 85 or whatever the math
So
is.
you're saying we're doing 175,000 over the course of 2 years?
Correct.
So can't we make that 87,500?
Yes,
Yes.
That would cut off some more money.
yes.
I have a question. Council. So what's the significant fallout if we just put it off for another year?
Well, I think the fallout in general is that, we run the risk of a lot of things that, we really want to put the stamp on it, and say, this is where we want the future of Goldsboro to look like. And if things start coming in, which they are now, and we don't really have that future laid out, it may be something that happens that we don't really want to see happen, because we don't really have the areas properly planned out and zoned right, things like that.
If I may add to that, and then of course I'll reopen the floor to conversation. This has been a major turnover in council, which is a wonderful thing. But it's a lot of new leadership and a lot of new guidance. It's a almost complete turnover in our planning department. And we're also at a time in our city's history where the amount of development interest is at a peak. And I believe that we should move forward in trying to get some planning in place, because even as we saw, 2 months ago, there was, or 3 months ago, whenever it was, there was a developer who came forward and said, here's something that fits within your land use plan. We're bringing something to you that you already said you want. And I think it is appropriate for us to go ahead and have this conversation and do this and do a plan so that we can assess where we are today with this council, with this planning commission, what it is that we want developers to be looking at and looking for. And I also think it fits nicely with the work that our development specialists, that position, once they're brought on, that they would be able to then help us using HUD dollars and using CDBG funds so that next year this time we're able to really direct some stuff into parts of the city that have really been left to their own devices for far too long. So that's my take on the question. I had the exact same question of, well, what if we just put it off? As long as it happens, that's the important part, but I think it would be wise to go ahead and do it.
Was this already included in the budget? That 100,000 is already included in the
Yes,
budget?
sir.
Yes. The 175 was actually.
So actually, because you had asked about the pavement condition index needing to be done, and I agreed with that, I was hoping we could take POW bill reserves, but we don't have any of those, so to do that. And so once I said that, we had to come up with another way to do it, and this was the way that, kind of was like, okay, if we divide this project up, because it's going to take 2 years anyway, and Kelly noted that's going to take 2 years, so I said, well, then we can also do the pavement condition rating index that way.
So one question
Yes,
for
Ms.
you,
Weeks.
Mayor,
Weeks.
in reference to a comment you made. So if the 175 is in the budget, and you guys are saying this is for a 2-year contract, and I understand what you said, that would make it 87.5. Didn't we just save 87.5 then, if we're postponing that a year?
The pavement conditions index, I didn't mean to move your glasses. The pavement conditions index was not in the proposed budget,
Got it.
but
Okay.
there you go. Yes, ma'am.
And now this is just for assessments, right? When it comes to the pavement, this is not going to go towards the actual work.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Got to do the assessments.
Okay.
Which would then help us with going and trying to get, road bond, trying to get and stuff to be able to make some dents, because we got some dents.
So I guess my other follow-up question was, will it move us, thank you, Madam Clerk, would it move us closer to getting that done if we put more money into that particular area instead? Because I get it, the land use, I'm with that. But we understand the conditions of the pavement and how long we've put that off already. So if we put more money into that line item, does that get us there faster?
No, because this
Okay.
is a total one for the whole city, and it would basically tell us what's really messed up and which we kind of know, but then they take a much more detailed analysis of it, and prioritize things as far as the condition of the pavement, where we need to focus our resources, limited resources.
Okay.
Councilwoman Taylor?
Are you talking about for both of those items together? Because I think what Councilwoman, Mayor Pro Tem was saying is that if we did away with the land use plan, is that what you were saying?
Well,
And just focused on the paving instead?
no, maybe not particularly do away with it, but pour more money into the pavement, which will ultimately take a little bit more money away from the land use efforts, but pour more money into the pavement.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to get clarification because I think, were you thinking that she thought just the paving, taking the paving away?
Well, we did the estimates, we feel like 75,000 is going to be enough, and, you know, if it's another 10,000, we could probably find it, but that's close enough to doing an entire pavement condition rating index for the entire city.
And again, this is just.
This doesn't
is
take
just
2
a
years.
plan. It's not actually.
Right, but what I'm
6
saying
months.
is I don't think, so we're not talking about taking away from the pavement. We know
No,
about
ma'am.
that one. We're talking about taking away from the land use plan.
We're really not taking away from any
Are
of
they
it.
a
We're projecting the time over a 2-year period. That's what we're doing
Okay.
for the land use plan. So we know the land use plan, for example, is going to cost 175. We're saying, let's do 100,000 of it because it's going to take 2 years to pay this first year. The remainder will commit for next year's budget at 75,000.
Or could we vice versa? And since this is a really bad year, could we do 75
We could.
and 100 next year? That would
We
cut
could,
off,
and
that would cut off 25,000 instead of the difference between 87.5 and 100.
we can certainly do that. And I think that's probably doable.
Is,
Because, yeah.
would it work just since it's half, and this is all estimates anyway, because we don't actually have a quote in front of us? Can we just split it at 85?
I think that works too, Mayor.
Everyone's okay with that?
87.5?
Yes, just split it at 87.5.
That's perfect.
The 100,000.
Yes, ma'am. So line item 8 would get shifted down to 87.5. Line item 9, again, is you don't have to do line item 9. I think it is a valuable thing that would allow us next year this time to be able to start moving towards road bonds, or being able to say with a more definitive analysis, I need state or federal help with this street. So I think it helps us open up some other doors to funding, but just full disclosure, the 75 was part of what was previously allocated to the comprehensive land use plan.
I'd like to keep that.
Okay. So do we have a general consensus on number 8 at 87.5 to allow us to move forward?
So we cutting that to 87.5?
Yes. Line item 8 to
Yes.
87.5. You're in favor?
Cut.
All right, so line item 7 is down to 50, line item 8 is down to 87.5. Line item 9, thank you. Line item 9 at 75, the payment conditions index plan. This is something that, maybe this is an amateur question. In fairness, I've never had Rick's job. Is that something that we could split over 2 fiscal years if we start it? Or is that not
Not
really a
likely.
thing?
It takes about 6 months to do one.
Okay.
And so it would be pretty much a 1 fiscal year job.
Okay. Is that something that council wants to take on this year, or is that something that council wants to put off for another year?
Line item 9?
Line item 9.
Okay.
Line item 8, we've already had a consensus of yes at 87.5. Now we're moving to line item 9.
I don't want to put it off.
I'm for keeping that.
What, line 9?
Line item 9, yes, sir. The
For our
pay.
roads.
Yep. And line item 9, do we have a general consensus to keep that one?
Oh, yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry, I was over here adding.
You're fine.
I
You're
got
fine.
my
You're fine.
calculator. I'm over here adding. I'm sorry.
I understand. All right, Parks and Rec Master
Trustee
Plan.
calculator.
Mr. Livingston, so I stopped stealing your thunder. Would you explain the Parks and Rec Master Plan, what it does, and what potential funding streams it opens the door to?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So, first of all, our Parks and Recreation Master Plan is well over 10 years old, which means that when we go out for various types of grants, they ask if, particularly the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant, they say, is your Parks and Recreation Master Plan been updated in the last 10 years? If you say, check that box, no, and that means you lose 25 points. That means you're in a non-competitive status to get Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grants, which can be up to $500,000, which we need a lot of grants to be able to replace our playgrounds, which are in dire need. So a little bit of planning goes a long ways here. It's going to cost about $80,000 to do one. This is another one of those multi-year ones. So we're starting it here, and then we're going to finish it in the next fiscal year is what they're proposing. Or maybe they can find someone that can do one for 40,000. But that's, get it started is what we need to do so that we can, have it and say we're updated and know what our future parks and recreation needs to look like and be competitive for grants.
Is this already in the budget?
It's already in the budget.
And may I ask you a question? Parks and Rec, I was reviewing my notes this weekend, and didn't you tell me in a previous meeting that they have, are they set up as a nonprofit, one part of their, where you could give for playground equipment, or didn't they have a nonprofit established?
People can give to the city, and they can earmark that money for certain things like that, and I'll let Catherine explain that some more, but.
So, the city's not a 501c3.
That's right.
But it is lawful to donate to the city as a state and local government because it helps reduce the taxpayer's burden. So we do take donations, and we do have a special revenue fund set up for Parks and Recreation, which we do get, and we set that money aside in that special revenue. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So we do set that money aside in that special revenue fund. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm very for that. I'm very passionate about what they do, and I've driven around, looked at a lot of parks, seen that this is definitely a win-win for us because we need this grant funding. But I guess my mind was trolling, and I was thinking, okay, could we, and I don't want to be the bad person up here, but could we cut the United Way altogether and fund our own programs this year? Make our own programs, our NPOs. I know they're not NPOs, but guys, we need to start pouring into our own services. This is critical that we get new playground equipment, get these grants. And so that right there is $40,000. It's just something for you guys to think about, okay? If we cut the NPOs this year, which I love every single one of those NPOs, every single one of them, but if we cut it all together, because you've already cut it down to 50%, that's going to give them very minimal, and then we pour that funding into our own entities, our own projects that we need to get funded.
Councilwoman?
Question. I'm just asking for clarification, but the fund that people have donated to for Parks and Rec, like we did with the cemetery, to pay for that building, are there any funds in there that we could use? No, we couldn't? Are there any funds in that account that we could use for this, so we wouldn't have to take it and put it in the budget? We could use it from that money?
Here, give me 1 second as I'm flipping.
There's, while you're looking that up, and then Pro Tem will yield the floor to you in just a second as well. The Parks and Rec, for what it's worth, I know a number of you have heard me say that is an initiative. I want to do a foundation for Parks and Rec.
Yes, I love that.
You've got, we have the Paramount Foundation. We have, there's another one that just escaped my mind with the Golf Association. They're separate private organizations that we don't control their funding and their board and all that fun stuff. But I want to be able to recruit donors and community partners, naming rights on parts of parks, things like we've done in different organizations where that you have those different layers of solicitations. It can be very, very useful, and there's a lot of folks in the community that I think like to have names on different pieces of equipment and different pieces of parks. And I think it can be a nice way to honor different folks as well. It would allow us the opportunity to set some boundaries of what those naming policies would look like and how those things could work. So I'll yield the floor. Ms. Quinn?
Okay, so there's a special revenue fund in Parks and Rec, but we also have a Parks and Rec capital project fund. Now, the special revenue in Parks and Rec only has about $11,000 in it, okay? So not a whole lot there. In the capital projects fund, we actually have, and these are our specified donations. So if you recall when the city partnered with doing that, it was the house where they rehabbed the housing complex. So we got $200,000 to use, but that has to be used for South End Park.
Yeah.
We also have some Go Wayne Go grant funding that we have yet to spend. We also have a sizable donation from the Bryan Foundation, but that has to be used towards the Bryan Multi-Sports Complex. And we did receive a generous donation from, it was East Point, I can't remember the new name now, but it was for an accessible playground of about $5,500. So in that fund, there's about $306,000 available, but again, those donations have been tagged for certain things.
There's-
Well, just getting back on the subject matter here, which is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, I really can't emphasize how important, how much of a best management practice it is to have an updated plan. We should be applying for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant every year. That Parks and Recreation Master Plan is going to lay that out, and we will be able to score enough points with the master plan, with the site-specific plan, to get upwards of, $500,000 annually to support our parks and recreation system. Now, we do have to match that dollar for dollar, but we can use in-kind labor, we can do other techniques to match that funding. So, again, this is, I was reluctant to even put this in here because I was like, but it was, was a discretionary kind of thing, but if we properly, get our plan updated and apply for part of grant, we will get some grants. We have to write them well, and, it takes a certain amount of skill to write those grants, but we work with our recreation resource consultant to help with that. We have a good recreation director. She knows how to write grants on these levels. But we have to score the points, and without an updated master plan, you're not going to get it, because it's that competitive.
Oh, I wasn't asking, I want to clarify, I wasn't
No,
asking
I was
the
just saying
question,
the
because
facts.
100% I want that in the budget. My mind was going, I was thinking, oh, wow, if Parks and Rec could have their own nonprofit, if our fire department could get a nonprofit, and our police department could get a nonprofit, we could take $100,000 a year and fund our own nonprofits that are, working here in the city, instead of going outside and doing that. I was just trying to see if it would be more beneficial. Our police need so much, our fire department, if we could do that.
So council, we can discuss potential funding streams for it, of course, in the future, and we will. But is there consensus around keeping the Parks and Rec Master Plan line item number 10 in the budget?
I think you have to be able to be competitive with your grants.
All right, and Pro Tem, you raised your hand as well, and then Councilman Weeks, if you have any further comments as well.
So for me, this might be a deal breaker. So I just for clarity, the Parks and Recs master plan is geared towards all of our parks citywide. Yes or no? That's my first
Yes,
part.
I've written some before. I did the Moorhead Cities update. I did that, so it is all comprehensive plan. They look at district parks, regional parks, neighborhood parks, all the whole gamut of programming, all the types of, they base it on population projections about what you're going to need. And we have a lot of parks per se, but what we don't have, and I don't want to speak for Felicia, but I've talked to her enough to know, is we haven't been able to fund the maintenance and upkeep of these parks the way, I think we probably would like to do that better than we are right now. And you can do that through grants. That's one way of doing it.
Okay, so in that regard, I can support that. But Mayor, if I will, Finance Director, you made a comment about the, and I know I probably say it wrong, the Go and Go grant. That's, I think it's like $70,000. From what I understand, that was going to be allotted for the Dillard Park, the Dillard track. So if we can get clarity on that at a later date, we don't have to do it right now, but just because it was kind of out there as we got the money, but I think that also was specifically allocated for the track. If we could just check on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, any other comments for or against?
I do have a
Councilman, yes,
comment.
please.
I mean, I might sound like the Grinch, but I'm just looking at places that I think that we can survive for a year. Cut, right? So I think that this is the line item that I'm willing to sacrifice today for the greater good for the budget. Right now, I understand that might not move the needle, but a quarter of a penny. But if we add everything else up that we cut, I think would be okay. I do understand everything that Matt said, the city manager said, and it makes perfect sense. But however, I think that in the grand scheme of things, with this master plan right here, I think I'm willing to do without it for a year.
Councilwoman Weeks, and then Councilwoman Taylor.
So I'm going to beg to differ. I work with grants a lot, and this is an investment. I can show you that where we invest $40,000 for a master plan might get us $400,000 for a park or for upgrades for a park. So you almost have to look at it as your return on investment. You're investing for this plan, which is going to help us be up to date, but in return, we're going to get much more in grant dollars, in grant funding. So I think it's an investment, a great investment for the return we're going to get to be able to update these parks that we're wanting to update.
Ms. Taylor? Councilwoman Taylor?
So when I was on the Parks and Rec Commission, Miss Felicia, she taught me all about this plan. And sometimes you can get like 4 to 1. $4 to your $1, just kind of estimate. So it is really beneficial. I just didn't know. So I know she said there was like 11,000. Could we use $11,000 of that money towards this? Or, and then could we plan on going ahead on and making a nonprofit, like you were saying, for Parks and Rec? And that way, maybe by the time next year comes, we'll have that money. We won't have to spend it again for the rest, because you said it was a multi-year.
Well, the plan is usually has about a 10-year shelf life, so this is a one-time.
So that 40,000 will just be one time. I don't know why it's.
Yeah.
Well, where did the 2 years? Somebody said something about 2 years.
Because it's going to take approximately a year and a half to finish it, so we feel like it's going to extend it by the time it gets 6 months into it, procurement, and then get somebody going, and then 6 months to do it, then or 8 months, then they're into another budget year.
So do we? So
if
Mr.
we
Livingston,
put it
can
off-
we? Yeah, if I may, if we split this one in half as well and split it over 2 fiscal years.
It's already been split in
Okay,
half.
so that's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, because they cost about,
I remember before.
It's about 80.
Yeah.
yep, they run about 80,000.
And I think she said last time they did one years and years ago, because it's very outdated, but they got like a bunch of, dollar for dollar. Have you do grant talk? It was a lot.
So council, obviously, we do need to make a decision, at least a general consensus-based decision. I'm in favor of keeping this in there because I want to move forward with getting some of these plans in place that I hope will allow us to help put the city in a better position a year from now and 2 years from now. And that's my stance on it. But we have to reach a general consensus as a council so we can prepare a budget.
Did she say we could use that 11,000, so that would bring that down?
I don't think so.
No?
I think Felicia would have some reservations about that because of the sources.
Okay.
So she probably already, generally, she plans her money out, so she
Okay.
probably already has that spent.
Okay.
So, sorry.
All right, Pro Tem.
Mr. City Manager or the mayor, I can't remember who said this, but is this the one where we have to do a dollar for dollar match?
It is a dollar for dollar.
So do we have the dollar for dollar match?
So
that it's
it
gonna
can be in-kind labor, so
Okay.
that we don't, and that's what I would recommend we do.
All right, council.
I was just going to say, I'm okay with this one too.
All right. Do we have any further comments for or against item number 10? All conversations very well taken on both ends of this particular issue. I think overall there is a consensus to keep it in the budget for this year. And so, Mr. Livingston, if you would continue on with the consensus of keeping it in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving to number 11 on our list, Friends of Seymour, this was brought up, and you sent out some contracts on that. I think you may have had a chance to read it. I believe that the contracts are, there's a 3-month out on that. I've if we need to look at those more closely, what those mean, or those contracts mean legally, we can, ask the attorney on that one. But I think we need to decide whether or not we want to keep this in the budget or remove it and talk about it when they come back to us in the future, provided that's what you want them to do. Did I say that well enough?
I think so. I'll go on record of saying that I want to keep the funding in the budget, keep it available, given the issues that we're having right now. But I'm not comfortable with the terms, and so I do want to renegotiate the terms before we issue payment for next year, given that there's a 3-month notice period there. But I do want to keep the funding in the budget to be able to continue doing that work. Obviously, council, the floor is open for conversation for and against. This is a layer of funding that we are, to be completely clear for everyone watching at home as well, the council is generally coalesced already around splitting with the county the cost to have a robust consulting group out of DC to be able to do some federal consulting on our behalf. So that amount of money is above and beyond what is put out for support of Friends of Seymour itself. Council is generally speaking not objected to that piece. Where we are right now is on the funding of the organization Friends of Seymour, and that's a $16,000 line item that the agreement's been in place since 21 or 22, I forget, I don't have it in front of me, and has a 3-month exit, no-fault exit that certainly could be exercised at the will of council. The conversation right now is if we keep the funding in the budget or do we remove it. Either way, there's going to have to be a conversation about some of the terms. So with that, council, comments for or against?
Question.
Pro Tem? Pro Tem?
I know we talked about the terms, and I'm not going to get into the terms, but there is a portion of that part of the term that goes into the overall total. So with the administrative fees to the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm not trying to get into the negotiation of it, but what I'm saying, that is a large portion of that.
Yeah, I think it's like 8,000.
Is how much?
I think it's around 8,000.
Okay, so that administrative fee, what is that exactly? And is the Friends of Seymour choosing the chamber to be their administrative agent? Because for me, I mean, I am okay with removing this, but I also am okay with having a conversation to say, okay, if we can remove some things based on preference. So I guess I'm trying to figure out what the administrative fee is. And another part of my decision, Mayor, is going to come into, are we as a council still paying the $20,000 like we've always done to the Chamber of Commerce? Are we still doing that as well?
We are, and what I would recommend, and that's for a whole different kind of purpose as a chamber member, what I would recommend with this one, if you don't mind, Mayor, is that, we do have them. I know they came in here and talked to us, kind of gave us a little update, but we kind of asked them more specifically about those things and what the expectations should be of this council and what you'd like to see with that, if you feel like they're, that you want to continue this relationship. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's a lot of money, but at the same time, it's more about, okay, if we're going to spend $16,000 with the Friends of Seymour or whomever, we want to know what we're getting for that $16,000. And that's what we need to be able to explain to people in the public, and that's what we need to understand and feel good about here as a board and as a city. So I say that, we can keep it in there, but then we also bring them back and say, this is what we want to see out of it, or that's not what you guys want, we go ahead and take it out, and we won't move forward with it. And we just notice them and say 3 months we're done. But I can't tell you specifically. I understand the value. I think it's about building relationships. I think it's critical that those relationships are continue to be fostered. But I can't, tell you that return on that investment, I think, would be extremely large, but I can't really tell you if it's been effective over the years. I don't have enough history there to really speak to that.
I have a
Council?
question.
Councilman Wicks?
Mayor, I have a question. So, Mayor Pro Tem asked the question if the $20,000 to Wayne County Chamber of Commerce is still included in our budget, and you said yes. So, Ms. Gwen, I guess my question's for you. I'm looking at line item number 6819 on page 401 under the special expense, and it's not showing me that the $20,000 is in the budget unless we've allocated it to a different class.
Or isn't that in the council's budget or the manager's
I
budget?
thought it was in the council's budget.
Okay, so it's a different, okay, I was strictly going by this budget and this line item, so it's been reclassified. Yeah.
It's in the manager's.
No, I think it's in the council's budget, yes, yeah,
It's in the council's budget.
yes, ma'am.
Under consultant fees, I think.
And what I was suggesting earlier is that if we put together a contingency fund for this year, and that those monies could be put in there, and if you wanted these agencies to come back and present and tell them what your expectations are, we can have it in a contingency fund, not necessarily earmarked for anything, for any particular agency.
I'll also add, and then Pro Tem, you had the floor, and then Ms. Weeks, I'll recognize you again. As I understand it, our contract with the chamber clearly defines what we're getting from that. There's a marketing return on that. There's specific events that we are listed as sponsors for with that. So that one, there's clear statement of work, there's clear purpose. That one, to me, is quite logical. With to the point of council, with the Friends of Seymour contract, it leaves room. It leaves, I think, a desire that we want to see more communication, that we want to see more involvement. And I think that the group is willing and interested in doing that. I think that, as I understand it, just having gone and asked some questions since we got into this process, Friends of Seymour uses or contracts with the chamber to do its accounting. It's a separate organization, but they contract with the chamber to do that accounting. I don't know how much that costs them. That's one of the layers to this agreement that I believe we should probably revisit. But yeah, those are my comments for right now. I believe it's Pro Tem, and then next week, so I'll recognize you after that.
So I would suggest maybe we do 8,000. I also want to go back and look at that chamber too, and I'm only bringing in the chamber. I know we're not discussing it, but I'm just saying I think some administrative things are in that as well, and I'm not sure if memberships are included in that. Like I'm already a member of the chamber through my day job, so I wouldn't need a membership with the chamber for that. And then I know we used to have an office inside of their building. And I don't know if that 20 helped contribute towards that office that we no longer have again. So I think that may be something, I don't know if that too was an administrative thing. I think I'm trying to say, can we get more bang for our buck? If administration is anywhere in our contract within that $20,000 scope, I think cutting the administrative from the Friends of Seymour, if it's 8 and we're funding them 6, I thought it was a little less than that, then I'm okay with saying.
I'm going off memory, and I've read a lot of things.
Yeah, that's
so
okay. I think
It's
I want to
7.
say 6 or 7.
It's 7.
So
I would say to cut the administrative fees, to cut that cost in half for the Friends of Seymour.
Okay. Council, we have comments. There's been the proposal put forward to cut the funding down. Of course, whatever we do here does not necessarily bind us to any specific contract with them beyond the agreement that's already in place. But we need to come up with a number. We need to come up with how we want to handle this line item. I think it's certainly a good look for the city, given what we have been through in the last few months, to keep a line item for the Friends of Seymour. I think they're an important piece. I think that those relationships yielded fantastic results for us in a quick turnaround scenario. But I absolutely understand in this current budget year, without having more concrete deliverables, shifting that number. That being said, it's completely up to council to reach a consensus here. The number that was thrown out was 85, I believe.
Half of
So,
what's currently propose.
All right.
Try to get it.
Ms. Weeks, did I recognize, or Councilwoman Weeks, did I recognize you?
I think she asked,
Okay.
she honestly asked the question. My question was not in reference to Friends of Seymour, but I would like clarification on why we are paying Wayne County Chamber of Commerce $20,000 when an average membership is like between $250 and $300. I want to understand that $20,000 fee that we're paying to them.
It's the sponsorship for for a lot of their events.
Okay.
That's correct, yes. And Catherine pointed out that in the, usually in the council's budget, there's allotted money for the chamber, but we're not seeing that right now.
It's bounced from year to year. And so it is budgeted this fiscal year in agency for 20. It is
Okay.
not budgeted, so I wasn't told to budget it, so I don't have it in the budget. So we would
Okay.
have to add that back into our number, so, you know.
Okay. So that's why it's not on line item 6819, correct? That's why that's not on there. Since
That
it-
is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
That's why I was questioning. I'm sorry. I wasn't
No,
trying
good
to
job.
question you a while ago and
Yeah,
continue
no,
to
no.
question it, but I did notice that it was not in the budget.
So if that's something the council would like to do, then I just need to plus it up on my changes
No.
to add that back in.
Nope.
I think we're probably going to want to be members of the Chamber of Commerce. I certainly see a lot of city employees at chamber events and going to the events that we sponsor and otherwise. I think we're going to want to be chamber members. We need to look at what their new membership packages look like. That's a whole different structure than it was, several years ago. But ultimately, I think we're going to want to be members of the chamber.
Yes.
The city, I think I think the city's going to want to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, but I would like to see that package first because I personally am not in favor of paying a membership for each department. I would want it to be a citywide type package membership.
That's how it was.
Yeah.
The 20,000 is for the city,
Right.
for sponsorships.
It's the whole city membership.
Yeah.
It's not broken up by department.
That's
So
a lot of
hold on.
money.
It
You're
is-
saying every city employee?
What?
What are
Yeah.
you saying?
Yeah, because
We get a certain amount of
$20,000
tickets
is
for
a lot of
each
money.
event we sponsor.
Right.
And then they put our name on the event, say that this is sponsored by the city of Goldsboro and the county of Wayne or whoever's sponsoring it.
So it's not for us to have because there's a membership fee and then there's a non-member fee. So that 20,000 does
That's our
not give
membership.
us
We're members.
access.
We still have to pay for the different events over if they offer us any event.
Right.
So if we're sponsors, we get like 6 tickets or whatever it is. After that, after 6 people, we have to pay whatever the membership fee is for that event
As a member,
as a member.
not as a non-member.
Right.
Because I was saying I'm already a member, so to me it's like now I got 2 memberships and I only need 1.
No, it's not
Well,
about.
I get what you're
yeah,
saying, that's
it-
why I asked the question.
Right, it's not about us, it's not memberships for us up here.
for the city.
It's the city employees that are going to a lot of events.
Yep.
But I thought the 20 was just for our sponsorship.
It
right?
is.
That's it. And
It-
then we
well,
only
it's-
get the 6 tickets. But
It is a sponsorship, but it's our membership to the chamber.
Yeah, it includes our membership.
So any events that say any other department head or city staff want to go to, that event would be paid for as a member of the chamber and
I
not
get
a
it.
non-member.
And the memberships are not specific to council.
Got
But
it.
it's the organization that is the city of Goldsboro. Its membership, it is at a membership level that was whatever the number, 20,000, whatever the number was, and then includes a certain number of sponsorships.
And we all get the perks. Everybody gets
Yeah,
the
yeah,
perks.
it's not just council.
No, I'm saying I was misunderstanding, thinking I get my own membership, but Wayne Community is a member of the
Right.
chamber, so everybody under that
As a
umbrella.
member of the chamber.
Right. It's
But
one
that's
of
not, that's what the $20,000 is for.
That's what it's normally for. Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But now you're saying it wasn't even, because I had brought to everyone's attention that it's not even in our
Right.
budget. It's not on line item 6819, as I had said previously before. So we need to determine if we want to add that back.
I'm in favor of adding something, but without knowing a number. All I would say is either roll forward last year's number or something so that there's a line item there to go and do it. Again, there's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of city employees that go to these events. It would be kind of hard to imagine the county seat of Wayne County, that city not being a member of the Chamber of Commerce to some degree.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I would
Gotta
say
be a
either
member.
roll the number forward or expect that within the next 30 days, as our membership expires, that we have a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce about what our membership is, and then do a budget amendment, almost immediately after we approve a budget. But I would probably say roll last year's amount forward and add it basically as a 13 right there.
I think that's a great idea. I just ask that we have something in writing.
Oh, absolutely.
Details.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We haven't finished talking about Friends of Seymour.
We have not. The Friends of Seymour conversation
That was
took albeit logical, but took a little bit of a turn. Back to that point, we'll come back to, Matt, if you would please make a note for a number 13, which is a chamber
We got it.
membership. And we'll start the conversation if last year's was 20, we'll start the conversation at 20, and then if we need to adjust from there, we'll adjust from there once we get to it. But the on Friends of Seymour conversation was, or the idea was put out at half of the 16. Is there any conversation for or against? I believe the A line item needs to be there. I can be on board with a change, but I do believe A line item needs to be there.
Are we not still in it? I know you
Yes, ma'am.
can't see me down here, so.
I'm trying.
I know. And so lots of times they already ask it, but, are we not still in a contract with Friends of Seymour right now?
We are, yes, ma'am. As of right now, we are in a contract with Friends of Seymour. The termination language in that contract is 90 days notice termination for any reason. So if we were going to materially alter that agreement, yes, we would have to involve Ron. We'd have to go through that process under the contract to change the terms and change the amount. Yes, ma'am, to be very specific in that answer.
So you're saying today we can decide, we've already paid them, am I not correct? We've already
Last year.
paid them?
For last fiscal year, not for next fiscal year.
Okay.
Councilman?
My only comment, as I expressed myself at the last meeting about that, is I would like to see the line item left in place, because I understand the significance and importance of that organization and what they're doing for us as a community. So I'm okay with negotiating a new contract, and with especially some of the things that Councilman White has pointed out multiple times with his concerns, I'm okay with negotiating a new contract and some deliverables, I believe was the word. That's not unreasonable. I mean, there's some things that, well, I know certain things from being around the organization, but there's certainly nothing wrong with it being spelled out, so everybody sees that. So I would like to see the line item and the budgeted amount stay, and then when the time comes here in the very near future, we're going to have that organization come to the council, and we're going to negotiate the path forward with them that this council approves. So we're simply earmarking the line item in order to be able to do that for the new contract. So I would just like to see that carry forward as is, and then we'll take that line item and make the best use of it as a council when the time comes.
Council, any other comments for or against line item 11? There's been the discussion of having the amount, of keeping the amount intact, ultimately, we've got to give some guidance to our finance director and our manager so that they can pull together a budget for us in 2 weeks.
Mayor,
I
Yes.
agree with
All
that.
right, Ms. Weeks and then Ms. Jones, if that's all right.
just one question for clarity. Can you tell me how much of Friends of Seymour was an admin fee and who the admin fee is paid to the Wayne County Chamber of Commerce, correct?
Yes. And it's 7,000.
And it's $7,000.
And Ms. Jones?
No, I would like for them to come to us
Right.
and put everything on the table, let us know what they're doing. I would like to keep it intact, let them come and talk to us, and let us negotiate, and then at that time, take it away if the council, if y'all agree. But I think we owe it that they need to come and talk to us, tell us what they've done, what they haven't done, why things have transpired the way they have, because, we know the situation. So let them come and talk to us.
Berto?
So, I'm even okay with leaving it as a line item and
Yes.
funding something. Okay, cool. If that's what we're doing, that's cool. We are considering low and COLA. We have chopped the nonprofit funding in half. We are gonna consider cutting other stuff in half. So all I'm asking is that we consider cutting the admin fee or cutting something from this nonprofit organization. That is what I'm asking for. I don't want to remove it. Cool, we can keep it. But $7,000 is a significant amount for admin fee, and I don't know if you guys have had or looked through the contract as it is written, but there's another 2 or so that's just for travel. So I'm not even asking to cut that, which we could have that as well. Considering we're cutting everything else in half and we're taking away other places, I think that it's reasonable. It's a reasonable ask to cut this in half as well. If we're gonna still fund it, fine, I can live with that. But I'm asking that we consider the amount by half, or at least the admin fee. So if the admin is 7, then 7. But I would like to see it cut 50%.
And I'm not trying to be ignorant, but I'm trying to figure out why we are paying a $7,000 admin fee. Why are we paying a $7,000 out of $16,000 goes to admin cost? And then I have to pick up a paper to find out that the F-15E Strike Eagles are threatened here in Goldsboro, and we're paying $7,000. That's almost half of this money for an admin fee. And you're telling me that admin fee is going to the Wayne County Chamber of Commerce. Oh, excuse me, it's $7,500. $7,500 instead of $7,000. So we're paying the chamber $20,000. Then we're going to give them a $7,500 admin fee. We didn't even know anything until we pick up a paper. That's how I'm educated about the F-15E Strike Eagles, possibly that they were going to be taken away. So educate me what that admin fee, what that's for. Are they, I don't get it. We hired a consultant. We've all voted to hire a consultant. Please, I'm just asking you to educate the public that's watching now and educate me, since I'm new on the council. What do you do with the admin fee? $7,500.
So could we just keep the line?
I have a line.
Miss Councilwoman
Okay,
Jones.
I have no problems with the 7,500. And I don't want to, go into it, because it was my understanding that, I don't want to get into a debate or anything like that. It was my understanding that the Friends of Seymour was the ones that told us that the F-15,
It is the.
they were the ones that told us.
Okay.
We did not know, and had it not been for the Friends of Seymour,
Okay.
we would not have even known. Now, I think $20,000 is too much for a chamber. I agree with a whole lot of the things that, both of you women have said. But Friends of Seymour was the ones that told us. Am I wrong on that?
I do want to offer just kind of my recollection of that moment was that our previous consultant, Roosevelt Group, completely missed the ball.
Okay.
And then when we found out through the grapevine, which was 100% through folks that were currently stationed at Seymour Johnson, having conversations with members of the community, it was relationships that had been built through the Friends of Seymour that got to DC to find out what was going on, which then resulted in the Roosevelt Group having their contract terminated, which then resulted in the hiring of Crossroads Strategies, because obviously that outcome from that previous consultant having absolutely no knowledge and no guidance on the situation was unacceptable.
Okay.
Okay,
As-
so, like I want to make clear that I have no problem with your discussion about the 7,500 admin fee. I just wanted to educate the people out here as well, to let them know that it was the Friends of Seymour that
Okay.
told us. And I know I would want someone to say
And
that
I wasn't
for me.
aware of that, so thank
Okay.
you for telling me that.
Okay.
Because I found out by picking up a local newspaper.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Councilman?
And one more tidbit to that, in that story, was when that happened and the Friends of Seymour chose to discontinue their relationship with the Roosevelt Group, they are also who went out and did all the legwork back and forth. A bunch of things went on to land Crossroads, and that group is who brought forth that. And regarding the Crossroads relationship, I know that each of us as council were offered the opportunity or extended the invitation to go and meet with the principal or one of the principals for Crossroads. And I don't remember who all did, but I know I certainly did sit down and spent probably an hour with that individual and had very good, to me, conversation of their intentions and their path and their methods and their plans and all that, and I was completely satisfied with the conversation that I had with Crossroads, which in turn led me to have some conversation with some of the senior folks with Friends of Seymour to thank them for setting that in motion. So again, I would like to see this continue, but with this line item, but if this council saw fit to leave the line item and reduce the amount of the line item, I don't think that's an issue one way or another, because we're going to have to renegotiate a contract. And if the new contract comes forward and the council doesn't like the terms of whatever the new contract is, we're not going to approve it. So I don't really have an issue if the majority of council wants to change the dollar amount. I mean, I think I'm obviously, I've already stated, I'm okay with it staying like it is, because I think ultimately what the bottom dollar of what the new contract is going to be is probably going to be in that zip code anyhow. But if we, as a majority vote on, or consensus on the council, is a different line item dollar figure, I'm okay with that, as long as we just simply keep it on there at some amount, so that we have a path to negotiate the new contract. Because if it goes over, just to clarify, if the contract that this council ultimately approves goes over the budgeted amount, then that's just an ordinance amendment for a couple of dollars to square it up. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman?
So can we make that line item $8,625 in to take away that 7,500, so we still have a line item and we still, I guess, are gonna,
I'm comfortable.
Figure this
I'm
out.
comfortable with that. I'd say make it a round number, make it $8,500, so it's easier to
so
type.
just do 8,500?
But can,
I was just going to confirm, Pro Tem, were you okay with that? That was your suggestion to start with, right?
yeah, she was there basically 20 minutes ago offering her wisdom. So, let's see, another hand.
Well, my recommendation was going to be to take it down to $5,000 and renegotiate the Chamber of Commerce contract down to $15,000. And there's your $20,000, because you don't have your Wayne County Chamber of Commerce money in your budget. And so where's that money going to come from? It's missing from line item 6819. There's no chamber budget in there, so if you want chamber budget in there, are you willing to cut back in another area?
Did I misunderstand? I'm sorry, can I ask?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Did I misunderstand that staff said that that money was simply included in the
Nope.
mayor, manager,
Nope.
council? So it's not budgeted at all?
Yes, that was what was
I
told to
missed
you,
that.
but then I questioned it again and said, I am looking at the budget, I have reviewed it again, and it is missing from line item number 6819. There is no allocation for Wayne County Chamber of Commerce for $20,000, and it is not in any other classification on the budget.
I misunderstood. I thought it was in another classification, so it's not there at all. So we need to, okay, well, I'd like to see that continue.
So sticking to specifically line item number 11, can council coalesce around putting an $8,500 line item there, knowing that we're going to have a conversation about how all of that's going to be spent, but for the sake of having a line item and moving to the next piece of our budget, can we coalesce around $8,500?
Okay.
All right. With that, we'll move forward off of 11, let's say 8,500. All right, and now moving to line item number 12. Matt, as you collect your thoughts, I'll offer my brief opinion on this one. That contract was emailed out to council. The brief history of how we got here. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, in trying to go back and get all of the different commitments in writing and squared up how things are supposed to be, there was an agreement that had been made between the city of Goldsboro and the housing authority over having cameras installed at the different developments around the city of Goldsboro. At that time, the then mayor basically made the agreement that we would offset the pilot, which is the payment in lieu of taxes, with some amount of money, which was $95,000, which would cover, I believe, 60% of the cameras. I don't have the agreement in front of me, but I know it's been emailed out to council, so I know everyone has looked at it, but for the public. City would pay about 60% of that. Housing authority would cover the remainder of that. Housing authority would then enter into a contract with a provider and then be able to provide those services, provide those cameras, and the city, of course, would have full benefit to them, effectively at a 40% discount. That was a 3-year contract. That 3-year contract does not end until the end of FY25.
Right.
I'm here to tell you there's not a good exit strategy for that one this year. Next year, we can 100% stand up and say, ain't gonna happen. We can do whatever we want to do. But obviously Ron is our legal advisor, I am not, but I'm here to tell you there's not a good exit clause on that one the way the contract is written. It's in y'all's email inboxes. Give it a read. If I miss something, I don't mind being called out publicly, but
And sadly, we don't own any of these cameras. We don't have any rights to them. If you read that contract thoroughly, we have no rights to it. Our then mayor made that verbal communication with them, and any other business out there where there was criminal activity, anything going on, they would have to provide police presence and provide cameras. And we have and if you read your contract, it's not $95,200. It's,
I've read it.
your contract's way much more money than that. And you talked with Mr. Lawrence, and he said there's absolutely no way out of this contract for this year.
no, what I'm telling you is reading the contract, Ron's knee jerk was, you're in it for another year. I didn't ask him to go through a complex legal analysis because it's largely silent on termination language. If we want to go that route, we can go that route. I was just giving you a surface level review. Councilwoman.
I understand we're under the contract, but I also understand that I would like to know. I would like to have the knowledge of exactly how these cameras work, how GPD has access to them, because I do clearly remember a couple of months ago when I was inquiring about these cameras, someone had to ask to make sure we still had access to them. So I just want to make sure what we're paying for and that we're paying all this money for these cameras. How's it helping reduce crime in our neighborhoods? Because in some of these neighborhoods, it clearly does not seem to be helping.
Right.
So that's my concern. Like, we need to know if we're paying this money, you know.
And also, can you use the CCTV surveillance from these cameras to actually prosecute someone? Closed circuit TV.
Closed circuit TV.
So can you actually use that equipment to actually, for prosecution? And have we used it for prosecution?
And that's in point what
Yeah.
I'm saying. I really need to know how, we need some facts
Yeah.
on this.
My recommendation is I would love for our legal team to revisit the contract.
So to move on this particular line, I agree with that stance. If we're able to exit it, we'll have Mr. Livingston discuss with Mr. Lawrence what options we have. In the interim, I believe we have to budget to meet the legal obligation.
That's correct. We
Right.
do.
I mean, if we have a legal obligation, then yes, but
But absolutely, if it's the will of council to instruct Mr. Livingston to discuss with Mr. Lawrence opportunities for exit and renegotiation, then we can, obviously, he's sitting here, we can give him that directive. And I don't think he'll be offended at all by that directive.
and sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I would also like to be able to discuss with the Goldsboro Housing Authority how they can help us contribute to bringing crime down there
Right.
Yes.
in those neighborhoods, because it's totally
Yeah,
unacceptable what is going on.
that's a good idea.
Yes, be a part of the solution.
Right.
Exactly.
Bravo.
So with line item number 12, per Ms. Gwen, if you would, the 95,200, that is the correct amount for this year, right?
I'm looking at my analysis
Right.
of the contract, and that's how we came up with it. The total cost per year was $190,386, and per the agreement, it was 50% reimbursed, which came to $95,193. So I rounded it to 95.2.
That makes total sense.
That's a lot of money.
I'm serious. I can't believe this.
That's a lot of
This
money.
is-
We just really need to make, I
That-
mean, too many
that
people's
flips me
homes are
out.
getting shot into, and people.
Somebody must have pulled some
Pretty
strings
simple.
for that one.
So you guys, I know that, you know, it seems like a lot of money. I was a part of that decision, and it came down to having them or not having them.
Right.
And I personally said I'd much rather have them than to not have them. So I get your conversation, and I'm with everything that you're saying. I just wanted to provide
Yes,
some
ma'am.
insight on why I thought it was valuable, because it was you do or you don't. You gonna have them or you ain't gonna have them. So.
Right, and
I
I get
honor that.
and I get that.
And I just want to say that I was part of that decision too, and I don't mind saying that. I was on the council then, and I was very concerned about my area because there were a lot of shootings going on, and I felt like it would be better to have the cameras and to be able to identify and know what was going on than not to have them. And so I did agree with that.
But we've had other businesses, even other hotels, where we have required, because they had uptick in their criminal activity, where we required them to put cameras in, but we didn't pay for those cameras.
The
So,
line item as it stands, I believe we have consensus
Yeah,
that it has
there's
to
no
remain,
negotiation.
that we are asking Mr. Livingston to please explore with Mr. Lawrence what options we may have at this time. But as far as the meeting the contractual obligation, we're obviously not interested in having a judgment or fighting it in court. Okay.
no.
So, Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
with this particular item, I know that we have to keep it now because of the contract, and it doesn't end till 2025 according to, because I've read the contract as well. But I would like for us to talk about this. I would like for somebody to come and talk to us about this and what we can do, and what we can do to make it safer in the housing. Because I am very concerned with the shootings, the arson as well.
Councilman?
I agree with both of my council mates here on each side of me, as well as other comments about the contract. Yes, we know about that, but I think that we're in consensus as a council that moving forward, as it relates to crime-related issues within those areas, we are going to, as a council, expect some accountability and some cooperation in order to move the needle in a positive direction. And I think collectively, we as a council have all voiced that since we were elected. And now when we get this budget behind us and get some of these things tackled, I absolutely agree. We need to see if we can move the needle in a positive direction for those.
Right.
We gotta do right by our citizens
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
that are
And
living
it's
out
time.
there.
That's right.
Like, we can't, we have too many citizens living out there that are just, it's not right.
And they're very frightened.
Councilman?
I have a question though. Is there any way we can find out if the cameras even work?
They do.
They work.
And
And just the percentage of time that we actually, use them in crime fight.
Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to say that I'm out there.
Every day.
I'll wait till she finishes. But I'm out there, and they do work. But I still have some concerns because there's still a lot of shootings going on out there, even with the spot shooters, even with that device. So I am concerned about it. But I do know that they are much needed, but we need to do something financially about it. But like I said, I'm out there. I'm on every street out there.
I guess my concern was, and I'm glad that they do work, but how do Chief incorporate them into his actual crime fighting? I just want to know. I'm just curious to hear how he uses them. I'm just curious.
Well, I can't go to his specific process, but I know that we do have Crime Watch out there, and he gets texts from me when anything goes off. So we communicate quite much.
Okay.
I mean, that's nothing that I share out here or share on my page or anything like that. But he does get information from us, from all of us. There are ambassadors out there as well. So he gets that information.
Okay.
But as far as how it's lifted from the camera
Right, that's
and
what I-
going directly to him, I'm not familiar with that. But I do know that he does get calls and he does get texts when things are going on.
I just want to see how you incorporate the cameras.
Okay. Okay.
Councilwoman?
Right, because like I was saying, there was a couple of months ago when I had to wait for an answer on if the cameras were accessible to GPD. At that time, I don't know if something happened, but, if we're paying this much money to access cameras, then they need to be working, and they need to be on, and people need to be watching them, and they need to be able to, as someone suggested, be used in prosecutions.
Councilman?
Maybe we need to ask Chief West to come and brief us on his struggles in that area, and let's have a conversation of what the police chief and others need moving forward to move the needle. And that sometimes that may not always be a easy conversation, but I completely agree. And like I said, I think the consensus of this council is we'd like to see the needle move in a positive direction.
Council, are any other comments for or against line item 12? All good feedback as always.
No comments
All
from
right.
me.
All right, line item 12 remains, obviously concerns all noted, and Mr. Livingston is instructed to ask Mr. Lawrence for some analysis and some options for current year. Now adding number 13.
Quick procedural question, I'm
Sure.
sorry. So once we get done this evening, the staff's not gonna be able to give us what that final number is, or will you? Okay, I didn't know if you needed time to,
Her spreadsheet is immaculate, if not overwhelming.
okay, all
I
right.
can say this on the tsunami cameras, because we use them and we use them here. There's an app that they have, they can download them, and it works as far as I've been told. Now, I haven't verified it, but, you know, my issue isn't the effectiveness of the cameras. And I've said that before, my issue is, why should we have to pay for it? My issue has been, why shouldn't the housing authority pay for it? Because when I was the manager in Aden, that's who paid for it. The housing authority was under it, and they got grants for that, or they used it out of their operational funds. But that's just my 2 cents there.
Next year, this time, obviously, we will have completed a negotiation because we'll either be budgeting for it or not in some format. And so this is going to be a very busy year in our relationship there. I think that was put on full display.
And I'm sorry, but I just don't feel like someone saying, well, if you don't pay for them, then you don't get them. I mean, that's not showing any concern for the people that live in those housing
And
authorities.
understood. Now we're on to line 13, which was the general chamber membership. This one was omitted from the recommended budget. It would be an addition back in. The last year's funding was $20,000, and that included, a number of different tiers of membership and sponsorships and whatnot. I don't know what their membership packages look like this year. I haven't seen one. I just haven't. I would ask that council include an amount so that there's something set aside to be able to do it. I would like to keep the funding at last year's, but under the circumstances, that's I don't necessarily think correct or appropriate. So, council, I would like for the city of Goldsboro to continue being a member of the chamber for obvious reasons. What is council comfortable doing? I'll put 15 out there to get the conversation rolling.
I'm good with that.
Council? And again, we're not going to approve anything until an actual contract comes to council. I'm just simply putting a line item out there, given that it would be a bit unprecedented, I think, for the city to not be a member of the chamber.
So what do we do if we get to that point and they don't want to say 15 is okay, they want?
Oh, they'll take your 15. Because the 15 includes sponsorships too, so it just may be that we can't sponsor every event with the Chamber of Commerce, but we can do a little bit smaller sponsorship. So we can say, create us a package for $15,000, and I assure you, they can create you a package for $15,000.
Is council comfortable with 15?
And they can do one for 10 too.
Is council comfortable with 15 and getting an actual proposal, to the city for us to actually vote on? At that time, then we can adjust it up, down, whatever it is. Councilman?
How long has the amount been 20? Has it ever been less than 20?
I can probably pull it up, might need.
It's going to be a single vendor, so.
Well, I can say as long as I've been a member of council, it
always
has
been
been
20?
20. And that's been 5 years now.
Councilman?
I'm good now.
Okay.
I decided to turn this way so you can see me.
Thank you. we need more arch. I wish this view was just a little bit steeper, because once you get any kind of lean back, everyone disappears.
I know it was not your intention.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Thank you for your grace on that. Well, Catherine, not to put any pressure on you, but
I know. I will say it is difficult to tell because there's so many things we
Layers
pay
to it.
to the chamber. It appears that I'm seeing a $3,750 payment probably quarterly, that's going into that. I can provide you some more information, to the council and just let you know what the history is, but it's gonna take some fleshing out because there's like 750 payments to the chamber
Right,
over
right,
history, so it's gonna take a little fleshing out. Sorry.
That's completely reasonable. Again, there's so many different layers to that membership as well, between the sponsorships, the base memberships, the
I'd
basic
like to recommend the
memberships.
15.
Can council be comfortable with setting 15, and then, of course, we'll actually have a proper proposal brought to us?
Yeah, I think 15 is
Okay.
good.
Council? Matt, I think you can move forward with a coalesced amount of, or a consensus amount of 15,000.
Gotcha, Mayor. I think that was the bulk of what we were here to do tonight. And, we're still going back to that? Oh, yes, okay.
Oh my gosh, yeah, all the way back up to, we still have 6 and 8 to finalize. Did we finalize 8 at 87.5?
I think we did finalize that.
All right.
It was the,
Number
the
6,
bonuses
the
that
employee bonuses.
yeah.
My recollection of that, I remember when then Pro Tem Polak made the motion, and obviously legally, one council cannot bind the actions of a future council. None of that is lost on me. But the penny has remained. The purpose of the motion at that time was for the bonuses. I feel like if we're going to keep the penny in place, the bonuses need to be in place. My stance on.
So could you
Well,
take the penny?
I never disagreed with the bonus.
Yes, ma'am.
At all. I was looking at places to cut, because our staff are very important, and I appreciate everything that they do. But I was looking at cuts, but I think we've done a great job of cutting a lot of things, you know? So,
Council?
what council, I mean, it's, you know.
I'm going to beg to differ. I love the staff as well. I appreciate the staff. I love them. But again, we're in a critical crisis year. Even these cuts here, this is a 1 cent tax, and I believe that we can defer that for another year. I feel like we need to, we're given the COLA, and I see that we've got 12 items, but there are other areas. Are we going to go into other areas of discussion of where we could possibly cut?
I hope so.
Because I'm not satisfied with just the 12 items that have been presented to us tonight. I have other questions. I'm not satisfied with the budget. I may be speaking for myself, but I'm still not satisfied with the budget.
Well, now, I want to talk about the 15 cent and the 11 cent. I want to talk about that. Was my understanding that we would be talking about that tonight.
We are. That's why we're here.
Okay.
These were things that were fairly obvious based on commentary from council so far. If there are specific line items that council also wants to bring up, either in subject matter or through specificity, that's what we're here to do. This is our primary remaining opportunity to do that, other than just general conversation. Councilwoman?
So, I know we've got to save money. So, but my question is, since that penny you're saying was still there, if we're not going to give them that bonus, can we take that penny away? So it would be a penny less, because it should be,
Yes.
in my opinion, we should be a penny down if we're not giving the bonus.
Remember, it was not originally in the recommended budget.
It's
Right, but the tax
equivalent tax
went up
rate
last year because,
of 12 cents.
Right.
so it's still in there somewhere.
It's in that equivalent tax rate that we have right there, that 12.5 cents there.
Right, I get what you're saying. So shouldn't it be 11.5 cents?
Yes,
Because
ma'am, it would go down a whole penny.
even though it's not budgeted into that amount, we still
not.
added it
That's
in.
Right.
Yes.
So it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
No,
It
it's
wasn't,
not.
it wasn't in the recommended budget, so
That's
it's not
correct.
going to move the needle at all.
So it's not going to move the needle at all.
No, because I didn't recommend it, because it, even though I think it would be wonderful to do, I understand the financial pressures and some of the other cuts that we'd have to make, you're talking about, we'd have to cut services. And when we had the retreat, you said you didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So right now, there's not really a whole lot of other places you can look for. You can tell us what you want to, take out, but we basically,
No,
yeah.
I just wanted to get clarification on that penny.
Well, it's not in the budget, so it's not going to move anything. I already took it off. You'd have to put putting it back in. Right now, I think, Catherine, you said we're
11.8, right?
So if we cut the bonus to $200,
still adding stuff back in the budget.
Where, to your point, Catherine, can you give us a synopsis of where we are right now, if you don't mind?
Sure. So with the changes that the council has agreed to, out of the 13 items, we have a total savings of $130,125, which is just a little over a half penny. Now, with the proposed revisions that I went over on the slide in green, that was a little over 3 pennies. So that takes us from a 15-cent tax rate down to it's 11 1/4. But like I said, we have to go either up or down, one or the other. So if we were to go down to 11 pennies, then I can, I would probably save $65,000 out of fund balance additional. That's not terrible. So we could do that to get to 11 pennies. If you add the bonus back in, that adds a penny, so you're back at 12. So essentially. Okay, thank you.
So council, 12 cents with the bonuses, 11 cents without the bonuses where we're sitting right now.
Yes, sir.
I have a proposal.
Please.
If you want the $400 bonuses for the employees, would you, because look, why not put that impact back into our own employees, okay, instead of United Way? Cut United Way altogether. This year, we find it imperative that we invest in our own employees. If we cut United Way or the PPOs and say, guys, we're going to invest in our own employees this year. We're going to give back to our own employees. Then the next thing I want to look at is, can you cut one vehicle? Not from police, not from fire, but can you cut one vehicle?
Well,
It's
that's
all
a fine thing.
financed.
Okay, so if it's financed, Catherine, I was looking at the budget. If it's financed, why is the whole estimated value of the vehicle put into the budget?
It has to be. We have to budget for what we pay out. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, because I don't do that in my budget, and I have a multi-million-dollar budget. So if a vehicle is financed, you would put your payments into the budget. You wouldn't put the whole entire vehicle,
Yes,
which
ma'am.
is worth $70,000 or $80,000, into the whole budget.
So I mean, we have to budget in accordance with, modified accrual, which means that anything that I write a check for, so when I write the check to pay the company for the vehicle, that has to be budgeted. And you're right, we do come back later, but now the payments on what we're going to finance this year won't occur until the next fiscal year. So that, when we do that, it's every expenditure, that comes back to that pre-audit statute that we have to follow. Anything that causes the government to write a check has to be pre-audited, which means it has to be budgeted. So it comes out, well, I don't want to get into it. It gets very complicated. We can have a separate discussion about that, but it has to be budgeted separately. But it is financed, so
So y'all
there's
have
revenue.
put the whole full value of all these vehicles in the budget. You're talking about 6 or 7 vehicles. You put the full value. She's telling you now that we finance these vehicles and we're only making payments. So where does all that extra fluff for the budget go?
There is no fluff, ma'am.
not
So,
understanding.
Where's that going?
Let me give you an example. So if we had 10 vehicles budgeted and it was $1 million of expense in capital in the budget, then what I have done, and I provided you that in one of your analysis, the cost of what's financed. This rolling stock I do finance, okay, because that helps in cash flow. So that is actually in the general fund revenues as installment financing. So that's the revenue. So if you take away the vehicles, so you say no vehicles, cut the 10 vehicles out, I'm saving $1 million, then I have to go on the general fund revenue side and cut the revenue out, which is installment financing. So it doesn't help, it's not cash funded. We're not doing pay-go for the vehicles. We're doing that for financing. So it doesn't help the tax rate any.
Yeah, because I kind of get what she's saying, because to me, it would seem like if you have
That's a line
a
item.
$300 payment
But-
times 12 months,
Yeah.
and then times 10 vehicles, that's $36,000.
But the payments that are budgeted in debt service in 8111 are for the debt service that's been taken on in prior years. That's not current debt service. That's not the proposed debt service. So what I do is I say, I'm going to finance $1 million worth of vehicles because we're going to buy them this year, but the payments won't start until the next fiscal year. So that's when those payments get budgeted. And that by law has to be done. You're required to budget debt service.
Because it kind of makes it seem like we're paying for the
Yeah.
vehicles outright.
No, you're not. You're reimbursing yourself so that you pay the money out, we pay up front, we have to buy it, then we go to the bank and get the loan. That reimburses the city. It becomes a revenue. So if you look at your audited financial statements, you'll see other financing sources in your audited financial statements. That's where the money is coming back in to finance it. And you just have to remember, so there's a difference between the front of the book statements, which are government-wide, which do it more on a full accrual basis, as opposed to the back of the book statement, which are budgetary, which that's what we have to go by. If you spend the money, you have to budget the expense, but then likewise, we can also budget the revenue, which is installment financing. It's a different source of money that's coming in the door.
I apologize. I guess I've been doing my budgets and my financing with my vehicles wrong all these 20-some years. I've been doing it wrong.
You're doing it private side.
That's
You're
different.
as
That's a
opposed to
different
government
methodology.
side. You see, the
You're
way
not
that
doing it
the
wrong.
way that we have to do it is if you go out and get a loan for $100,000, you have to count that as revenue, and you're offsetting that revenue with the cost of the thing that you just bought.
Yeah.
You're not doing it
Public
wrong.
sector
There's
finance.
different.
It is
There's different
different. It
sets.
is
Yeah, I'm just looking at
complicated.
the line items, and the total amount of the vehicle is on that class for that total line item. If it's a $70,000 vehicle, then, so then my next recommendation, you want your employee bonuses, I'm back to investing in our employees this year instead of the community. That would scrap that $100,000 altogether, which is down to 50 now. And then I personally would like to recommend that the budget go back to each department head and they cut a minimum of 5% each from their budgets. A minimum of 5% each. And they can find a way to do it. I am confident that they can find a way. I've done it to my department heads before, and I've said the money's not there this year. It has not come in. The income has not come in. We're on a strict, tight budget. This is our community. This is their taxpayers' dollars. And so I am not, I want the budget to go back to the department heads, a minimum of 5%.
For Tim, you have the floor, and Councilman Boyette, you raised your hand after that.
So I'm with cutting. I'm also with the bonus. However, I do not think that we should cut from the community. And that's simply because these organizations touch so many of our kids, of our parents, particularly in the South End and in those areas where they need it most. So I will say, instead of 50, we can do 25 there. I'm also cool with scrapping that land use plan. I don't want to take away from the community. So if we are in agreement of doing that 400, right, then let's figure out what else we can shave down, not necessarily eliminate altogether, but let's just shave down. Because personally, we can ditch that park and rec master plan as well. If that's going to mean that we still get to invest in our community and invest in our employees, because I don't want to lose that investment in our people, because it matters. It matters.
Councilman, and then Councilwoman. You had your hand up first. And
I
then,
did.
All right, and then Councilwoman Jones.
It's painful. I get it. But asking our department heads to go back to our department heads and asking them to cut again when the staff has already been to them multiple times. And I have been through some of these departments' budgets, sitting down with those department heads, watching the painful cut, and we're getting to a point with some of this, as the manager said, we can't cut services. We're to a point that, I mean, it is what it is, and we've made it through this far to 11 and a quarter, down from 15, and I realize how we got from 18 to 15 was taking money from the fund balance. And I realize how we even got to 18 was the manager and Catherine, before it even got to us, going back to his departments and saying, cut. They've already been told, cut. We can't go but so far before reality sets in that we can't go but so far. And I'm satisfied at this point with where we were at and down to 11 and the change, and being able, if the mayor had asked for it, and obviously we didn't, but if the mayor had said, do we have a consensus where we're at right now, I would have said, take a couple of more bucks from the fund balance to get us to an even 11 and let's roll with it. I was okay with that. But I can't sit here and say that I'm going to be asking that this staff to go back to these department heads and cut after they've already cut and cut. We're down to I mean, when we got elected, that this place is literally falling down around us. I mean, our vehicles are worn out, and we've got departments that, the majority of their vehicles are past or at the end of their service life, and our vehicles and our equipment is falling apart with 60-some% turnover in one department. We can't hire people. We already know all this stuff. But I'm saying we were elected because we promised that we would turn this city around and put it back together. And I know in my district and my conversations that I've been having for a year with people is this was coming. There's no way around it. There's no way around it for a certain amount of what we're doing. And I think we've done a fabulous job of dialing back. But I'm like the manager said a while ago, we're getting awfully close to where there's no more dial back on things that are going to move the needle. I do not agree with asking this staff to go back to department heads and cut again after they've been asked to do that multiple times.
I disagree with you.
Councilwoman Jones had the floor after Councilman.
Well, y'all know how I do not like to be redundant, and I do not like to echo people, but after hearing the comment about our community, we do want to invest in our community, and we do care about our community and what's going on, and we want to do the best that we can as a council. They put us here. But we also need to take a look at our staff and let the staff know that how much we appreciate them as well. Like I said, I don't want to echo what Mayor Pro Tem said, but I want to make it very clear that the community is very important to us, and we are not trying to look at the community over the staff or the staff over the community. We're trying to come up with a good budget that will help everybody. But I disagree with the department heads going back. They've done the best that they can. So I guess we'll be here talking.
I have another comment to make. Those of you that are watching at home, how many of you have $70,000 vehicles? I'm asking you a question. 5% of $70,000 is just taking $3,500 off. So you're saying, hey, instead of buying a $70,000 vehicle, go out and find a vehicle for $60,000 or $65,000. I am looking at every single one of you and telling you cuts are possible. Cuts are possible if you're willing to make the cuts. But at what cost? Because you guys are the ones paying the taxes. You guys are the ones paying the taxes. They can buy a $65,000 vehicle or a $60,000 instead of a $70,000 vehicle, and so that we could get the tax rate down to even possibly 10 cents instead of 12 to 15 cents. Cuts are possible.
Council, it is 10 after 8. We've been here for a couple of hours. We're going to stand in recess until 8:15 for nature breaks and for just, well, using the restroom, to be honest with you. 8:15. people.
See, there's a Diet Coke.
We drink up all the diet, but regular now. You gotta have a sugar rush.
Aaron goes to fund balance. So
Yeah.
we can actually do that. I mean, it's easier for me as a man.
Hold your comments unless you.
Never mind, I won't say anything.
We are? Yes. We're live, right?
It's good, it's good.
All right, everyone. Everyone has returned to their seats. Appreciate the flexibility on a brief recess there. Those things can be very beneficial. So, where we are, to recap, and obviously Ms. Gwen is on her way back in as well. Where we are right now is effectively 11 without the employee bonuses, 12 with the employee bonuses. Matt, Catherine, if y'all would give us a little bit of context of where we are, give us a little bit of history. The department budgets, the operational funds, are they flat compared to last year? Are they up compared to last year? Where are they? And how did we get where we are? And I realize some of that's asking you to write a brief novel, but I think it's important.
I mean, if you look at it compared, the budgets are fairly flat when you look operationally, okay? The increase is in the salaries, all right? So I'm going to try to get y'all a total to let you know what the department heads cut out of their operational budget. Because generally when we asked them to cut the $1.5 million out so we could get to the manager recommended budget, they got pretty close to that. And it is painful because the problem that you run into when you look at that $56 million general fund budget, there's about $13 million in operational cost. That $13 million, a lot of that is obligated through contracts, services, insurance, things of that nature. So there's not as much discretionary. Can there be some more cuts? I mean, yes, it's possible, but it's just tough operationally because obviously salaries, we're not talking about cutting salaries or cutting people at this point. So operationally, you've only got that $13 million, but a lot of that is obligated. So, I mean, could you save some money? Could be. I think you're just going to, I mean, we would have to look at it. So, anyway, I'll stop.
Well, to that point, if you've opened that door, what would you advise us to look at this point?
I mean, you know, my suggestion is, you know, we could do a couple of things. For the bonus, if the council would like to keep the $400 net bonus, is we could go back to the departments and say, departments, find half of it. We can fund the other half with the fund balance. I'm not crazy about it, but I mean, we could do that. Could they find half of that? And of course, you know who it's going to hit the most because number one is police and fire because that is the majority of your general fund budget. So both chiefs are going to have to go and find out operationally what can I cut. Am I cutting training? Am I cutting what? Because they're the ones that impact that 227 number the most. So can they find half of it? Maybe. So that would be maybe like, I'm going to guess 1.5% to 2% of their budget to find that. So you could possibly do that. I don't know that I would recommend funding all of that out of the general fund balance. I mean, the other thing, you could possibly reduce the COLA by the same amount. So maybe you don't get a 2% COLA or 2.5%, maybe you get a 2% COLA, but you get a $400 net bonus. That would be the other compromise to it. I don't know if Matt has any other thoughts about that.
Which I had recommended that at our last meeting. I had said if you wanted to do the bonus, to go to 2%, and then you would that 0.5%.
I've got to look at it. I got to run the numbers.
The only thing that I would
And last year, and then I want to regain order because there's a lot of hands going up. For the record, last year was there were 3 categories last year, if memory serves, and I want to get this on the record. was there COLA, merit, and bonus last year?
Yes,
Yes.
So those three categories, COLA was what?
2%,
And then merit was what?
1%.
So that was at 3. And then there was bonus that was flat 400 across the board, each individual, right? So this year, we're talking about doing COLA at 2.5. We're not doing merit. That's not currently in the budget, right?
No, it's not in the budget.
Right.
I cut that in advance because I knew that we were in a tight
So
situation.
we're already half a percentage point below what we were doing last year, and we're talking about not doing the bonuses from last year. I just wanted to get it on the record so that we're all talking about the exact same thing.
But while you're
And-
putting that on the record, you also gave your police and your fire department a raise too.
Right.
So it's taken in consideration, we gave the raises as well.
But there are other departments.
Yeah,
There's a lot of other employees.
of course, but I'm just sharing, you were saying you didn't do this %, but you did that, but we've given
Right.
raises in that department too.
That's true. That is true. And those two, and item 1 up here was in the fire as well. Now, with that, Matt, if you have any comments, and then council, I have Councilman Boyette on record, I have Pro Tem Matthews, and so Matt, the floor is yours. After that, Councilman, and then Pro Tem.
So this has been a very, very difficult budget because early on, we were replacing ARPA money that was supplanting that. Then we increased the police pay twice, and now we're increasing fire. And I agree with all those kind of positions the city council has taken. But I knew it kind of would paint us in a corner, because it meant automatically property tax increases. That's what I want you to understand. That's what I think we tried to make clear. And I was concerned that this could happen because you can't, if you're running an operation, you can only cut so much. And if you cut too much, then it's going to be a situation, and, we've got Rick here that can explain, how it would affect his budget specifically if you want to hear from him. But my solution, and this is not the thing that I would like to say, and I normally never do this, but is because we're 1 year away from a revaluation and we can look at things in the future, is to take money from our fund balance. And I'm reluctant to do that because we're on the UAL list, but we have improved every year and are continuing to improve. So that would be my solution if you want to ease the burden this year on the taxpayers, which I'm one of them here in Goldsboro. And I would say that would be a way to get us to where you want us to be. But just remember, we got to watch out for our fund balance because that's that gauge that everybody looks at.
All right, thank you, Matt, and then Councilman Boyette, and then Pro Tem, and then we'll go from there. All right,
Pro Tem.
perfect. So Councilman, Pro Tem, Councilman.
To piggyback on the manager's comment, it's imperative that we continue our path that we've forged to go forward with our audits and getting off that unit assistance list so that we can address our capital needs and reinvest in equipment and things of that nature and be able to borrow money and be able to do a bond to fix our streets and all these things. It's imperative that we come off of that unit assistance list ASAP. And we have a path to do that we're on, and things are looking good. But I remain concerned, and this is a comment, not a budget adjustment suggestion at this point, but I remain concerned and will remain concerned that we stay cognizant and understand that every penny that we take from that fund balance is going to be noticed in that trend. As it stands right now, the state has a minimum. As we know, there's a minimum threshold for what the state requires or the LGC requires for you to maintain, and then there's what all of the average is for our peers. Is that correct for me to say that? And our fund balance is doing this in the middle. We're below, and somebody please correct me the first time I say something that isn't accurate, but we are below the state average.
We are.
considerably what our peers are, what we're bouncing around between the minimum and the average. We're not above average, and we have to be cognizant of taking money out of that fund balance if it's going to place us in any danger of coming off of that unit assistance list, because that unit assistance list and coming off of that is vital to turning this city around as it relates to the things that people see that move the needle for our citizens, fixing the streets and improvements with those kind of things, and being able to replace vehicles when you got fleets of public works where, you know, everything they've got's aged out and being put together with needle and thread. So we got to be cognizant of that, but we also we just got to find our position there. And as it relates to asking departments again, I mean, as the mayor pointed out, we've got 2 department heads sitting here with us in the audience, and if it's not out of order, I would like for Rick, since he has multiple divisions under his department, I would like him to come and say, this is where things stand with my department. I would like to hear it directly from Rick.
If you will, let me go through council comments, and then if it's the will of council, we will. But after you, there were already Pro Tem and Councilman White in line, and then so I'd like to follow in that order. Is that your comments for now, Councilman?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was
I'm just trying to make sure to try to run the meeting. That's all. Pro Tem and then Councilman.
You guys, so in an effort to build bridges and not walls, let's figure out how we can do it. So I heard earlier the suggestion of, okay, if we don't do 4, can we do 2? So if we can't do the whole, how can we figure it out? So right now everybody's kind of in their own corner. So what is it going to take for us to say, okay, we can't do the 4, or the 4, we want to do something, but maybe 4 is not the best number. So if we do 2, or if we do 150, to me, something we're still finding value in giving them something. But I mean, I'm okay with 150. I would love a little bonus, so thank you for that. But it doesn't come to me. So let's figure out how to do that. Right? We get it. But what does that look like? If we just take these 12 items, right? 13 items, excuse me, that we just worked with alone, what are we willing to scale back on? I don't even think it's necessary for us to get into the departments just yet. Let's just look at what we've been looking at all night, which is the 13 items, and say, where can we afford to slide a little bit? Remember, we're looking at needs versus wants. So a lot of the items up here are possibly just wants. So where can we cut? Where are we willing to cut? Or is this board even willing to do the bonus? Because I don't even remember us having a consensus on if everybody was in agreement to the bonuses. And I know it's not favorable to say I'm not with the bonuses, but right now it's people over politics. So are we willing to cut some more just off these alone? And I got some tabs in here too that I could go in and say we could stand to lose this and it doesn't change our operation. So there is some things that I think we can go through this book and say, but let's just focus on the 13 things that we got right here. If y'all are willing to do that, you know what I mean?
I am.
Okay. That's a start.
Councilman.
Well, with that being said, I'm of the mindset of I think that there's still some stuff that we could cut, because I know when we first started this, and as the city manager said, we got painted into a corner because we did allocate money that we didn't have. We said we didn't care how much it costs. So it's time to pay the piper. So there's some things that we're going to have to cut that we really don't want to cut. You know what I'm saying? It's all about priorities at this point.
Yes, I believe with the cuts, if we would put some skin in the game, we could get this down to a single-digit tax increase. We could get it down to a single-digit tax increase.
That's what I want.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That's what I want.
We knew we were going to have to put a lot of funding out for the police and the fire department. That was our primary goal. But I am telling you, we can take some things out of this budget still to get this tax increase down to a single digit.
Do
If you
have-
get the tax increase down to a single digit and include the bonuses, I won't argue with you about your bonuses, but that's a 1 cent tax increase. And so I believe that if you go back to your department heads and you say, if you want this bonus, we got to get this tax in, down to a single digit. Our community deserves to know that we all have put skin in the game.
Let's try this approach. Obviously, a couple of different options have been put out there. Council, and then Ms. Taylor. What? Oh, no, what I was trying to get out was Councilwoman, and trying to recognize everyone while their title while also thinking. Can we agree on, let's just see where everyone is on a tax rate, ignoring what's in it for a second, because we've been through this for the last 3 hours. We haven't. We were trying to bring forward the things that people had explicitly mentioned over the last month, but there's more. Obviously, there's more. Can we coalesce at 11 cents? Can we get to 11 cents and then task our manager and our finance director and our department heads with figuring it out?
Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that that's exactly what we need to do, but I'd already recommend we use 500,000 in fund balance, because I can tell you that we are cut down pretty lean right now.
Right.
And I'm concerned that if we go any further, they're just going to be back up here needing budget amendments. And that's not productive either. Now, we can instruct them to, operate efficiently, which is what we always do. But, in the grand scheme of things, I don't like using an extra 500,000, but we're using 1.5 now. We're putting almost 6 million back in unassigned fund balance after the end of this budget year. So, and we'll have to, it's asking a lot of the department heads, and they're going to say, well, I'm not going to have enough money to do this, and it hurts our ability to serve the public.
Councilwoman.
I know I'm the one that brought up this bonus. And a lot of it was because I needed clarification on how that was working. I do not expect to keep asking the department heads to cut what they need. I do not want to sit here and put a even more burden on the citizens of Goldsboro having to pay more taxes. Because a bonus is good, but there's lots of people out here that have bills that do not have jobs at all. So, that being said, maybe we can go through or talk about Mayor Pro Tem's tabs that she has. Some of the tabs we have in our books, there may be something else that could pop out of us that we haven't noticed in order to get down to that amount. So I love our city employees, but next year we will be in a better financial position.
Councilwoman Jones.
Well, there's 2 councilmen later, but what I wanted to say is that's what needs to happen. I would like to see us. I know what the statistics say about our fund balance, but I know that we are not where we need to be. I know that we're in the middle, but I really like the suggestion of going through the fund balance. Yeah, the $400 was put down here, and I do like giving our staff something. And if we could cut it to 200 or even to 150, that's fine. But from what I was seeing and understanding that we actually had a surplus in our fund balance. Can you explain that to me? Because we seem to be doing pretty well with the fund balance.
So we anticipate with the fiscal 23 audit that we're going to have a little over $6 million added back to the general fund balance. A lot of that is coming from the ARPA, where we saved the money. It was paid for by the ARPA grant. So there's a lot of that. There's also a lot of PO rollovers that occurred in 23 going into 24. So as I showed you when I did the first big presentation on the 20th, you know, we talked about that one chart. I know it was hard to read, but what we anticipated, department head said, here's what we think we're going to spend. And I said, estimate right now, we're going to use about $3.5 million of that fund balance because we had a lot of PO rollovers, right? So, you know, in fiscal 23, we're plus up let's say $6.5 million. But in fiscal 24, you're going to see your fund balance go down about $3.5 million. So you see what I'm saying? It's a cash flow issue is what it is. So that fund balance is going to go down in fiscal 24. I do fully expect that. Depends on how many PO rollovers we have going from 24 to 25, how that impacts. So right now, if we're talking about $1.5 million or $2 million in fund balance, you have to add also the PO rollovers that where things don't get fulfilled. Then we have to pay for them in the next fiscal year, so we could take another hit on the fund balance. So yes, our fund balance, as I had in that one slide, I'm ballparking it, that maybe we'll be in that 40-some% range, which gets us closer to our peers in fiscal 24, but we're going to use it. So you expect that number, it's going to go back down. Now, is that better than being at 11% or 15%? Absolutely. So does that help a little bit? I know it's getting a little convoluted there, sorry.
It's okay. Councilwoman, any follow-up?
So refresh my mind about the $100,000 because that went, the $100,000 that we were given by the ABC board, that did go into fund balance, right? I know $100,000 isn't a whole lot of money, but we're looking for money.
Yes, ma'am.
And where it is.
So we're talking about the $100,000 check that they presented us
Right.
with. So we budget for the ABC board, we budget an amount. It is very, it goes up and down. With COVID, we got quite a bit more than what we budgeted. But we do budget for it, so we use that to help us balance the budget. It is an incoming revenue source that we use to balance out the expenditures.
So with the rollover of the PO orders?
Yes, sir.
Is there any way that we can get like a heads up on what's still out there floating that we haven't cashed in?
So we are in the midst of that right now, and my procurement manager is working on that with the department heads. And, you know, as I think I mentioned to the council, I told them, you know, no PO rollovers, essentially, unless it was absolutely necessary. And right now, I've only had maybe like 2 or 3 from fire and 2 or 3 from police. Everyone else is a no-go. I mean, so there's not, to my knowledge, there's not going to be a lot. Now, you also have to remember in utility fund, we have a lot of construction projects that they're not going to get done, but we're not talking about the utility fund right now. We're talking about the general fund. But in the general fund scheme of things, I'm not aware of it. I will have a final list somewhere by the 3rd week of July after we close out the books, and I'll know at that point what we've got. But I'm not expecting a lot, sir.
Okay.
Councilman?
Just when thinking off the top of my head, a year ago when this discussion started about what the future was to hold, I had sort of figured that it was going to cost us a nickel or 5 cents to fix police, 5 cents to fix fire, 5 cents to overcome inflation, and about 5 cents to overcome ARPA without, or to replace those funds. How close was that realistically? I mean, just round numbers, those 4 or 5s.
I think we looked at it and we were looking at, it was over 20 cents. So, I mean, you know, and we've backed it down. Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah.
So the reality of the fire department is real. The reality of the police department is real. We're doing that. So if the ARPA funds, we're just going to sort of pedal backwards out of the fund balance to fix that issue. And we're only making a couple of points of adjustment cost of living, which doesn't equal to what that is. At face value, when you think about that, okay, we just said three, four things is 20 cents, and we've got through the diligent work of the staff and the sacrifices of the department heads, we're sitting here looking at 11 and a quarter roundabout instead of 20. I mean, that's phenomenal. So if we can get to a consensus with, as the mayor pointed out, if we say, okay, or pro tem, I'm sorry, if we get to a consensus and say, okay, we'll just stick with what's on the paper here in front of us that we've talked about, that puts us in 11 and a quarter. So we just get to consensus and say, we'll take a quarter point from the fund balance one more time, so we're at a round number. So we get to a consensus and say 11 without bonus, 12%, 12 cents with, 11, 12. We're right here. Let's get it done and reach a consensus with what we got in front of us. 11 cents, don't do the bonus. 12 cents, do the bonus. And let's draw the line in the sand. I've already struck a victory with everybody. I've been talking about this for a year. Because we're at 11 or 12, not 20.
And if we want to go down to 9, the only thing I'd recommend is to use a fund balance, because if we go through it, we're going to find out that there's going to be issues coming back later with budget amendments.
Budget amendments, right.
And if you go down to 9 this year, next year during the revow, it's going to be the same situation all over again. They're going to, it's going to need to be another 9 or 10 next year.
Because we got to operate.
It was only what last year, 2 cent, 3 cent?
8.
The city had 5, didn't it?
Yeah.
5,
I think so, because we went 69 to 70.
I'm talking about the city.
The city last year, was it, or was it 7?
For the city increase last year, tax increase.
I thought it was 5. I could be wrong.
But yeah, do double check.
I think it was 5.
I think it was 5.
My brain is kind of fried. And that has been, and I know that it's just a challenge upon challenge, but operating with the tax base that we have to function and fund all these departments over the last several years has been very tough, because, you know, people talk about the effective tax rate being more like 52 cents. So things are going to change drastically next year with the reval, and so that's the only reason why I feel like we can use the fund balance to kind of, you know, not maybe hit the taxpayers quite so hard. And if we want to look at, you know, what services we want to deliver or provide residents as a way of shoring up our local government or making it less costly, then we can reduce services. But it's hard to have all the departments we have and the staffing we have and provide those kind of services on the property tax valuation that we have right now. That's why we've had to raise the taxes, because it's not keeping pace with the cost of service delivery. And it's mostly because of inflation. I mean, really, that's a big part of it.
It was 5.
So last year was 5.
5 pennies.
Can you get it down to 10? Can you get it down to 10?
Yeah, we can pull another penny out of the fund balance, but I mean, where do we stop?
Ms. Jones.
I would like to get it down to 10.
We got to pay it later.
Getting it down, we're not going to be happy with the results of what's left. It's the operational budgets for many of our departments have shrunk. I would like us to do, and this is not I'd like to, I don't have any interest in raising fees and taxes on people, but I would like us to be at, can you do half pennies, or you have to be at 11 or 12?
No,
Do half penny.
you can do a half.
You can do.
penny.
I'd like us to be at 11 and a half with a bonus. Matt, you and Catherine and your department heads decide how you want to do that. If it's 200, 300, whatever it is, 11 and a half with a bonus, and bring us a budget at next meeting.
I personally am not going to agree that. I'm not going to agree with it.
All right. Councilman-
There are line items on this budget, line items
Allow
on
me
this
to
budget.
please go in order of those that raise their hand. I will call on you next, Councilman.
So just to make sure I understood, your suggestion is for the staff to come back, show us a 11.5 cents budget, and let them tell us how much the bonus would be to cap us at 11.5 and leave everything like it is.
I'm saying 11.5. These pieces here that we've clearly defined.
Right.
They are what they are, but as far as digging into the individual departments' budgets and telling them, are you allowed this much money for uniforms, you're allowed that much money for, for office supplies, that, let them figure that out. Let's set the rate at 11.5. Directive that there will be some form of bonus would be my current suggestion.
Basically the 1/4 cent, because if we reach consensus at 11.25, then the 1/4 cent would be what funds the bonus.
If that's how you're thinking about it, yes, that
Okay.
does make sense.
Then I would support that if we need head nods.
All right, Councilwoman, and then I believe after that.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I just said 10 and that, cause I was.
Okay.
Can we look at 10 and a half? I'm just trying to get it.
And I apologize. Councilwoman Weeks did have the floor. I was checking to make sure if you were
Oh,
going,
okay.
I was checking to make sure if you were
that's
going to
fine.
go next. I just
Okay.
wanted to queue
All
up.
right.
Guys,
Councilwoman.
I'm telling you, I have been through the budget. I'm looking at the fiscal year 2023, 2024, and I'm looking at what they had projected and what they actually had used. There is money in the budget. There are enough of line items where the whole usage was not utilized. There is enough money in our budget that we can take this budget down to 10 cents. You can do it with 10 cents. I am telling you, if we put skin in the game, I'm not asking any more cuts from the fire department. I'm not asking any more cuts from the police department. But I personally have looked through the budgets. I'm used to a budget. And there are line items where they did not use the full usage. I mean, I could start calling them out to you. I can call all kinds of things where they did not use the full amount. And it is available. If you want it to happen, it can happen. We can get this budget to a 10-cent tax increase.
Catherine,
So-
Matt, or council, one way or another, we've got to come to a consensus tonight on what we're going to direct staff to do.
Agreed.
Will you speak?
But hold on, let Catherine
That's my
finish her.
All right, so if we bank on the fact that we're gonna have a revaluation that will take effect in 2026, okay? We use fund balance now to the tune of about $2.1 million. We can, and do the full $400 bonus, then based on that, preliminarily, it looks like we can get to about 9.5 pennies.
To do that, all right, to do that, next year, that's presuming that the valuations go up 30, and that's presuming that then we hold at current and not do a revenue neutral.
Right. So
Right.
it would depend on that, right?
Right, so
depending on
next
that.
year would be another 9 or 10, right?
Well, so we have to calculate revenue neutral, so
Right.
this is where I was talking about the equation. You have a valuation, you got a tax rate, and that's your property tax revenue. So it's the valuation piece of that equation is gonna change in the next fiscal year. So if that rate, I'll come back and say, well, revenue neutral rate is X. So let's say X is, 75 pennies.
Right.
Instead of whatever we're coming to, the 83 pennies. Then that's what the council will have to decide. Do we leave it at 83 pennies, or do we go to 75 pennies?
Right.
That's what we're gonna have to decide, so. But we can get to, like I said, it's a shade over 9.5 pennies. But like I said, I'll just have to adjust it through fund balance because I don't have any other revenue sources. And I would like to please confirm my numbers,
Right.
but that's where I'm at right now, so.
That's taking a lot of money out of fund balance.
It sure is.
And I need council to understand the ramifications for that before it agrees to do that. I'm not saying don't do it, because I have no desire to tax myself or anybody else. but I need council to put on their operational hats for a minute here and think through the ramifications of pulling that much money out of our fund balance. And don't be surprised when it has issues for us 6-8 months from now. But if 10 cents, 9.5, whatever it is, gets us across this line, that still preserves the pieces that we've talked about up here, then allowing you and your department heads the flexibility to maneuver within that number.
Guys, for those of you watching at home, may I please give you one example? These are some of the numbers that I personally added this weekend. For instance, for the utilities fund, line item number 2998 for chemicals. It was adopted, our budget for 2023, 2024, $1.6 million for chemicals. Estimated year end, only $761,000. I have been through the budget page by page. I am telling you guys, we can get this budget down to 9.5 cents.
So that's the utilities fund, it's a different fund, that's
Yes.
one. And then the other thing
But
is,
still,
the reason
just
why
give you
that
an
was a
example.
saving is because our people found a better way to buy bulk purchasing through a discounted provider. So the new budget shouldn't reflect that number. But we're also kind of, sometimes we have to put something in there for, like, if we're thinking it's 5% inflation or 10% inflation, which is what we've been living under, we have to put in that. That's why we change those numbers.
And again, Matt, that was an example. That's an example of a line item, and I'm telling you, there are plenty of those line items in this book. Again, Miss Catherine, you said you could get it down to 9.5 cents.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman?
I still think that we should go through, because there are some incidents where the end year usage wasn't what we requested. It was less than what we requested. And I think if we do our due diligence, we can get the budget down without going into our fund balance, the $2 million.
I do too.
How would you like to proceed this evening? What do you recommend? Do you want to go through the book line by line again? Or do we want to say, here's the rate, please bring a modified budget to us?
There.
And,
Let's do, here's the rate, please,
and
and the
then,
modified budget.
Councilwoman and Councilwoman Taylor.
My only concern is if we do that, we still have council mates sitting up here that are not gonna be satisfied with that, because they're still gonna feel like their input into what needs, like, the differences in the cost and the actual use and other things that are flagged in the books have not been taken into account for, so that people are still gonna feel like there's something else that could be cut. I really think that our voices should be heard fairly. And then, instead of just saying, okay, this is what I think you should cut, but isn't that what we're here for, to give our input into what we think could be cut without harming the departments or other things?
Every council member has been given a copy of the book and multiple opportunities to go and meet with the finance director and with the city manager to be able to talk these things through. But I'm happy to go through individual line items and let them address them if we want to. If we want to go, then please go right ahead.
I just want to make sure that, that no one has any stickies that before, someone else.
All right, Councilman, and then Pro Tem, and then we'll keep going.
For the record, to support her comment, and I held this up 2 weeks ago, I had sticky notes. I had a whole book of them. But I went and sat down with Matt and Catherine and got answers and clarity to my questions. And then, me personally, I got back out of the weeds, so to speak, and then let them steer the ship. And I would like to see a head nod, at least, so we know what direction that we're going in, if that's not out of order, for the mayor's suggestion that we do we take what we have here, we cap it at 11.5 and let them come back to us at something with 11.5? Do we have 4 people that would agree to that?
It's a resounding no for me.
Well,
Anybody else?
ask
I
the,
want to stick with the 9, but I also agree with, because I know you can't see me down here, I also agree with the mayor with what you said earlier about saying, this is what we want, and come back with it,
right.
instead of this other stuff.
Where we're at right now is at 9.5 with stuff that's here, and then pulling out of fund balance. We can go sticky by sticky, but I want to ask, are we at 9.5? Are there head nods that get us at 9.5? We can still voice individual concerns, but can we be comfortable with 9.5?
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm comfortable at 9.5, as long as Ms. Gwen goes back and looks and see if there's any other items that she could possibly cut that we don't have to take from fund balance. But 9.5 is where I'd like to be.
So
Ms. Gwen?
that part, it is difficult for me as the finance director because I don't run all these other operations. As I said, your biggest drivers in this budget, 56 million, is police and fire. So if we take the percentage and we allocate it, because it's not fair to ask, a small department that has a $500,000 budget to cut, 30% out of their budget. And I understand the fluff, I understand there might be some stuff in there, but you just have to understand when we allocate it out, it has to be allocated out based on their relative amount of budget. So the cuts are going to come from police and fire in their operations. So, can we get some stuff out of the smaller items? Yes, ma'am, we can. We can go back to the departments and say, cut X, but also realizing that there could be some impacts on services because that's not there, so. And I would say I'd ask the department head to do it. I don't want to do it because I don't know their operations, so.
Person?
So, Ms. Gwen, can you tell us what that, and you might have already said it, what is the actual dollar amount that is going to take us from where we were to getting to that 9? Like, what is the dollar amount for that?
Dollar total. Oh.
If you can.
So, sir?
It's just adding up.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
You can
So-
use mine, Matt.
Well, if we're trying to, so it's like 233,000 per penny. So we're trying to get from 15 down to, like we're saying, maybe 9.5 roughly. So, we're talking about 5 million, that's over a million, 1.1 million. I'm just roughly trying to add this in my head, so.
So, Ms. Quinn, so right now we're at 11.8 though, right? When we started tonight.
Let's see, and I.
Yeah, so Ms. Gwen, don't take me from the 15 number. Take me
Yeah,
to
that's-
where we
you
currently
kinda
are
scared
right
me, right?
From
now.
where we were.
And that's where we
Tonight,
started
yeah.
from, right?
Yeah,
Right
from
there.
that, yes, sir, on
Yeah,
that
okay,
slide,
okay.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like so.
Thank
We
you,
got from
Rod.
11.8 to 11.25.
Thank
So
you,
it's
Rod.
yeah.
Really not.
Well, we got from 11.8 to 11.25 with this consensus on
right
this
there.
paper. And the way this got from 11.25 to 9 was stealing the money from the fund balance.
But what is
Basically.
that? That's what I'm saying. Thank you. What is that difference? Not from the 15. What is the
okay.
difference from the, and I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
Okay.
What is the difference from the 11 to the 9? What is that dollar amount?
Roughly gonna be about a $500,000.
Yeah. That's why I said, go up to $500,000 from fund balance, and it's not anything that I'd like, but I wouldn't recommend it except for we're in a reval year. So that's why we can hit that cushion and be okay.
Well,
But we got to straighten
Yeah.
we got to straighten our organization out so that we're basically, our employees, the number of employees we have and the services that we offer are right-sized. And that's going to take some doing.
If that's the case, can you not cut 250 from your budget and take 250 from your fund balance?
You could. We'll allocate it out, but like I said, the biggest parts of that are gonna come from police and fire.
Person?
So I guess what I'm saying is, because I'm looking at, I want to go back to these 13 items that we've been working on. If we just took a couple of things, because I'm with saying if we're going to get rid of some of these things or even reduce the current total on these items, it would lessen the amount of money we have to take from fund balance.
Yes, you
so
can-
I'm not talking about going into, and I've got some sticky notes, but they're really penny ante things. But penny ante things add up.
They sure do.
They add up. But just focusing on these 13 items alone, I see areas in which we could cut to get us way closer to that $500,000 than taking the entire thing from fund balance. And I think
Yes,
that's
it's
what
true.
we're saying.
Well, yeah.
I'm not touching fire or police.
But
right.
that's
Not
why
at
I put
all.
those on here, but you guys went through it and said you wanted to keep basically everything on there.
Right, but what I'm saying now is we're looking at, okay, the number is still too high.
Okay,
So
then
I'm
tell
just
us what
trying
else to cut.
I'm just trying to really kind of poll the council to say, if we're trying to get it down to 9.5 without us going into fund balance, then what else on just the 13 alone are we willing to say we can go down on, we can get rid of? We can go down, I mean, I'm looking at, I don't want to do this, but I'd much rather forego some demolition if that's what it's going to take for this year, right? I can get rid of the Parks and Recs master plan for this year. I can get rid of some other things that we can sacrifice to get us closer to the $500,000. That's what I'm saying. If the 9.5 is where we're trying to go, then let's look at this list before we even go to the book. But I can go to the book and find a few things, but it'll take a lot of little things to add up to the big things, which I'm okay with doing too, because I got some.
I'd like to set a rate and allow our staff to do their job of saying, here's how I'll budget within it, because some of these things they're dominoes. I mean, you can't do the things we want to do in parks without a parks plan. You can't do some of the things that we want to do with streets and with streets specifically without getting the conditions plan. Like, we can take every single thing we want to out of this, but understand the things that we said we wanted to do at our strategy session, things we said we wanted to do, that's what we're cutting. That's what we're saying, never mind. And it's getting very, very flat and very, very meaningless. And I don't want us to completely walk away from all of the things that we've been telling folks we were going to execute when we've been told the whole time that this is what it was going to cost. Councilman.
Agreed. There's 7 of us up here. But Chris Boyette, District 2, I ran my campaign and I made promises that I was going to help turn this city around and do my part, and that priority 1 was public safety. And as the pro tem said a while ago, I'm not backing down off of that commitment. And I also told every one of my constituents, 94% of the vote in my district, and told every one of those constituents in that district that a tax increase was coming to achieve this. And if we're going to give 10 cents to police and fire, then we have inflation, then we have ARPA funds to replace, and we've got it down to 11 and some change. Whenever it took 10 cents, 11 cents worth just to fulfill the commitment that I made and that we as a group collectively unanimously agreed on to fix public safety. I'm not backing down off of public safety and the commitment that we made there. I think that this group and that staff has done a phenomenal job of getting us to the point that we're at on this paper right now, along with our input and work, to get us to 11 1/4. I think that my phone's going to be blowing up tomorrow with people going, holy smoke, how did you pull that off? That's a lot better than what we were expecting. It's got to be a line drawn in the sand. What can we do? We've got to fund public safety. That's got to be done, and that's basically where the only increase that we've come down to at 11 1/4, or go down to 11 or up to 11 1/2, as the mayor suggested. We're all flat. We got one department I know that went that, I mean, just the loss of ARPA funds and figuring out that in one department was a significant amount of money. If we can just get past this one point, I mean, there's good times ahead. There's development coming and things happening, and we got to get past this, but I'm not backing off of my commitment to public safety. And also, as I said multiple times, we've got to be cognizant and with mindful of that fund balance. I just sit through an all-day class with the finance department yesterday with the League of Municipalities, and I did get awarded a certificate for municipal financial management. And part of that class was talking about that fund balance and talking about these things and that the unit assistance list and how I know that it's tough, but I know that there's a majority of our citizens that understand we got problems and we've got to fix them. And public safety and what we committed to do for public safety and what we are spending the money for public safety is basically what our tax increase is. I'm ready to draw a line in the sand and I stand by the mayor's suggestion if we could just get some consensus on that at 11 and a half or 11 and a quarter, whatever it was. If we've got to get it lower than that and we've got to do it by taking money out of the fund balance, we're going to have to pay the piper again. I mean, there's just no way around it. I'm sorry. It's just, as we all know, it's tough sitting up here, isn't it? And I'm having to learn. I've never been a politician before. I've been a business person. I understand how to run a checkbook and a calculator, and it's tough. But I'm not stepping off that bandwagon with public safety.
Councilwoman Taylor, and then Councilman Weeks.
I'm not opposed to taking money out of the fund balance. I just want to make sure that it's not going to affect our position of getting off the unit assistant list. I just need some reassurance about that.
I mean, I can't make you that promise. I mean, it's a lot of fund balance to use. Considering the situation that we're in, trying to be compassionate to the property taxpayers and not have the rate so high. I think as long as the council can commit to, we've got to turn this around next fiscal year. I mean, just, you know, I mean, I think that's the thing, because I think this really is truly a one-time use of it, I hope. So.
What's that hope based on?
Well, I mean, hope that we get the value that we're looking for, right? And our property values. That's going to be the thing that turns it around. So.
And the new development.
And the new development. That's true.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Stuff that is permanent. Right?
Yeah.
All right, council. It's 10 after 9. We can either try and play the role of finance director or manager and go line by line, which obviously is our right. Or we can say, Ms. Gwen, finance director, you put out 9.5 cents, and you said that we could pull the rest from fund balance, and that we, in your opinion, could operate. So council.
And for clarity, Mayor, that is without affecting public safety.
It will affect public safety. It's going to affect everybody.
I'm saying that's without taking that out from their budget.
It's going to come out of their budget. It's going to come out of everybody.
Well, so
No.
I know what she's saying.
yeah. So the cuts. So we're adding
Yes.
back the bonus. We're taking the difference out of fund balance, and so we're not going back to the department saying, "Okay, police
Correct.
department, you've got to cut
Right.
$250,000." So we're not saying that.
Yeah.
Right. Every
It's not
department-
Ms. Hiawatha. That was stated incorrectly. She just stated it correctly for you. She was concerned as well that that the comment that was just made, that it was going to come out of the public safety budget. She
No.
just restated it for you.
Each of the departments will be treated the same, and that they will not be they're not going to be asked to make cuts. We're going to do it all out of fund balance. Is that correct?
That's
All right.
correct. Right.
Yeah.
I will say that I did make cuts myself, and then I asked on top of that, after I cut it down, them to, I sent it all back to them once and said, you gotta cut it, I think it was, I can't remember, it was 5 or 10% or whatever, we cut it down amount, so I mean, I feel like I've already asked them to cut as much as they possibly feel comfortable doing, and that concerns me if we force it more, that we may be going too deep. I'm sure we could find some, money in there, I don't disagree with that, but I think that it's a lot of effort to get, maybe a few $100,000. Now, that may be equal to a penny, but at this point in time, I would rather have the monies there in the department board budgets and feel safer about that than, and that way to do that is to use the fund balance, which I don't like any of these choices, but I think that's the safer one for the city right now, and be able to provide services.
And to back up what Matt says, in your book that you were presented, he cut about $7.5 million out of the department request. We went back, we cut another $7 million, so we ended up with about $14.6 million that started out in asks that were cut down in order to get us to the $55.9 million proposed budget, so.
Okay, so real quick, I remember when we were talking about giving raises to the police, and this board stood boldly on whatever it costs. And it seems like now we're saying whatever it costs, but not this. So what I'm saying is, if we don't want to take money out of fund balance, I'm looking at 13 things that we can afford to forego for this year. Mm-hmm. Year after year after year after year, I asked about paving, we took it out. Year after year after year, I asked about the summer youth program, we took it out. Those were valuable things that the council at the time thought we could go without. I know for certain if we can go without employing our young people who was helping putting money into their homes, that we can forego a park and rec master plan. We can forego a little bit of demolition, even though most of the blight in this city is on the south end of Goldsboro. And it's been there for years, and it's been ignored for years, and I want nothing more than to clean up that district. But I am willing to forego that, because whatever it costs me, okay, who's going to lose a position? Whatever it costs means, how long are we going to forego a Hummer Park Center? Like, these are things that we are going to have to do. And whereas the people in District 2 may say, oh, I can do 11. They can probably do 20. People in District 4 cannot. They cannot. So if that means that we got to go without a plan, just a plan for people to drive around and see what we could do here, what we could do here, I'm cool with that. If it takes the burden off of the taxpayer, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. And if we don't want to go into fund balance, what are we willing to forego? Because remember, we said whatever it costs. So now, whatever it costs, we're here now. Even at 9 o'clock at night, we're here now. Even being here all this time, we're here now. So I get it. But if we want to look at the picture, we got to look at the whole picture. District 2, they might be cool, and I'm not disputing that, and I appreciate you polling your constituents on that. But there's a majority of people in this city that's going to hurt real, real bad. Real, real bad. So I'm asking you guys to look at this list so we don't have to go through this. We don't want to put more burden on the staff. Cool. Let's not even open it. What are we willing to just do right here? And it seems like some of you have taken a bold stand and say, I'm not going to touch that. You don't want them to do this. You want to just say, this is what we're going to do, y'all go make it work. Nah, let's figure it out now. What can we do here? Do we want to remove the bonuses? You want to take the bonuses off? No. Do we want to remove the land plan?
I didn't put the bonus in there. You looked at me and
No. I'm just saying, like, is that because we're trying to figure out how to put the bonus in?
Yeah.
So
okay.
Are we willing to keep it out? You know what I mean? Like, are we even, nobody's even willing to look at this list and see what we could do. It's almost like you guys are saying, nope, not gonna look at that, not gonna touch that. This is what I want, go make that happen. And I don't think that's a fair position to take if we don't want to go in fund balance, you guys. So let's just look at it.
Well, we spent the first bit of the meeting going through these.
Okay.
All right,
Cool.
Ms. Jones, or Councilwoman Jones, and then Councilman Boyette.
Okay, I am okay with looking at the 9.5. That's where I want to go. And the reason why I wanted to go that way is because I know that people who live in my area cannot afford all of this. But and I am in agreement with taking the money from the fund balance. Because I really think, now I don't have a business, my mother did, I don't have a business, but I do believe that fund balance is going to be okay. Also, looking at this list, if there's anything that we need to do, we can look at parks, we can look at 10, we can look at 7, and we can look at half of 5 and half of 4, if that's what we want to do. But the easiest thing, and sometimes the easiest thing isn't always the best thing, but let us look at the 9.5. Let's take this money out of fund balance and be done.
Councilman, and then Councilwoman.
Me personally, I was happy to see us come all the way down from where we started at 20 was the original conversation since down to 11.25. That to me was a victory. But if it's not the will of this council to consider that a victory, and 11 isn't a victory, and the will of the council is for the victory to be 9 at the expense of the fund balance, then four votes will make that happen. But me personally, and I'm just going to state for the record one more time, anticipating or not being able to see my way through 20 cents a year ago, that tonight we've arrived at 11.25 and we've fixed our issues with public safety and got through the departments and we've arrived at 11.25. I understand that some of our council members and my council mates here are not considering 11.25 to be a victory. But me personally, and what I feel, 11.25 is a victory, and that's simply where it's at for me. So if that's not good enough for the will of the majority of the council, so be it. But I'm good, and I consider 11.25 a victory, and not having to sacrifice anything else, including the fund balance. But if that's where it goes, and the fund balance goes into in order to reach a majority vote, I still think the best thing to do is, as the mayor suggested to start with, he put out a number and said, give the staff this number and let them come back in order to just stop the train. Let's get a majority vote on a number and then let them come back to it, and then we can end this.
Councilwoman.
Can we just do a poll on who's good with the 9.5 and taking the rest out of fund balance, please? Can we do that?
Yes, I was. Well, after I actually made it across,
Okay.
I was actually going to do that again.
Yeah.
I think that we can get close to it. Can do it.
Oh, I'm
her-
sorry. Can you repeat it? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Council, before I do that, are there any other comments or questions right now? So right now, council, can we get a consensus at 9.5 coming out of fund balance? Just stop the sentence right there. Can we get a consensus at 9.5 coming out of fund balance? We can? All
Got
right,
a majority.
we do. Dang near have a supermajority. Council, I'm impressed and I'm proud of the deliberations. I would encourage everyone to take full advantage of the opportunities as they're brought forward to go to the city manager and the finance director with these comments and questions, as that can save a lot of public display and time, and allow us to arrive at these conclusions more efficiently. If we have a consensus at 9.5, and we have a consensus at we're pulling out a general fund, and leaving these things up here, which I do believe is wise, because that sets some seeds in the ground for next year to be able to do some things, then I will do a final call for comments or questions. We'll consider this our closing council comments as well, unless something comes up and we have more questions. And then we'll adjourn. Are there any other comments or questions from council for this evening? Hearing none, we stand adjourned.